Speaker.
House.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in accordance with Standing Order 53, I beg to move that the debate on the Administration of Justice Indictable Proceedings Amendment Number 3, Bill 2019, be adjourned to later in the sitting in order to revert to urgent questions.
Honorable members, the question is that a debate on the Administration of Justice Indictable Proceedings Amendment Number 3, Bill 2019, be adjourned to later in the sitting in order to revert to urgent questions. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it.
Urgent questions.
Honorable members, you will recall that responses to urgent questions number 2 to 4 were earlier deferred at today's sitting. I will now call upon the member for Couva South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Minister of Finance, could the Minister inform this House if he has realized any success as it relates to dialogue with the Bankers Association of Trinidad and Tobago relating to the waiving of standard fees imposed for the changing of the $100 note?
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the request was made to the banks with respect to the waiving of fees, particularly for the elderly. In the commercial banking sector, the fees vary. Some banks have no fees at all for these transactions, whereas some banks do. Some banks do not charge senior citizens as a matter of practice. The banks have all agreed to consider the request, and I expect within the next day or two, I will receive a more positive response. But at this time, I'm told that several of the banks are not charging any fees, and others are not charging senior citizens.
Member for Couva South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Ministers, you gave your response. Does that include, and I know that you said this is an evolving situation or dialogue, does it also include, in terms of the different stakeholders, the physically challenged and so on in our society?
I'm not going to allow that question based either on the answer or the response. Any other supplemental question? Okay, so member for Oropouche East.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, question number 3 to the Minister of Social Development and Family Services. With respect to the devastating floods in several southern communities last week, could the Minister indicate when victims can expect to receive financial compensation for their loss of essential household items and damage to property?
Leader of the House.
Very kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government and the ODPM are two of the key first responders in any natural disaster that affects the country. The role of the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, following clearance and the submission of damage assessment from the first responders, is to provide financial assistance and support to disaster victims via grant funding, food support, and psychosocial support, including counseling services as required. This happens upon receipt of damage assessments from the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government and the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services thereafter seeks to have the claims processed in the shortest possible time. Madam Speaker, the disaster relief assistance is provided to victims whose items were destroyed beyond repair as a result of natural or man-made disasters. And this assistance includes household items up to a maximum of $10,000, and these items include refrigerators, stoves, wardrobe, living room set, bed, complete with mattress, washing machines, chest of drawers, kitchen cupboards, dining room sets. A clothing grant of $1,000 per person, school supplies grants of $700 for primary schools and $1,000 for secondary schools. And this grant is intended to assist children who are attending primary and secondary schools whose books and or uniforms were destroyed. There is also,
Is now spent.
thank you, ma'am.
Supplemental, member for Puchis.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the information. Could the minister indicate whether or not the financial compensation as per the policy would be provided to affected residents before the Christmas holiday?
Leader of the House.
Madam Speaker, as I said, once the information comes to the ministry from the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government and the ODPM with the requisite information and the national ID cards and the completed forms are sent into the ministry, we will do everything in our power to ensure that it is provided expeditiously.
Member for Puchis.
Thank you very much. Minister, could you provide an assurance that the residents of the Penal-Debe area would be treated in a similar manner as residents in Greenvale, where they can obtain replacement furniture and appliances in a timely manner?
Leader of the House.
Madam Speaker, as I said before, the disaster relief assistance deals with household items up to a maximum of $10,000, and it includes refrigerators, stoves, wardrobes, living room sets, beds complete with mattresses, washing machines, chests of drawers, kitchen cupboards, dining room sets, a clothing grant of $1,000 per person, school supplies, $700 for primary schools, $1,000 for secondary schools, and as I said before, once the information comes to the ministry, it will be dealt with expeditiously.
Member for Puchis, question number 4.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Question number 4 to the Minister of Finance. Is the Minister aware that the current shortage of currency in denominations of $5, $10, $20, and $50 bills at many commercial banks is having a crippling effect on businesses today?
Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I think the question is a bit of hyperbole and exaggeration. There's no crippling of anyone. Some banks have reported that due to heightened demand for the exchange of the old $100 bill, some clients requested and received smaller denominations in exchange for the cotton or paper $100 bill. As such, there was a reduced supply at some branches of some banks towards the end of last week. The banks have advised that they are in the process of restocking the smaller denominations today in the more critical branches and expect to have this rectified in the main across their networks by tomorrow.
Supplemental, member for Puchis.
Can the Minister give an assurance to the small business sector, particularly the retail sector, that the notes 5, 10, 20, and 50 will be available at commercial banks tomorrow?
Minister of Finance.
I repeat, Madam Speaker, the banks have advised that they are in the process of restocking smaller denomination bills today in the more critical branches and expect to have the issue rectified in the main across their networks by tomorrow.
Supplemental, member for Puchis.
Is the minister prepared to take any action to assist flood victims who themselves cannot go to the banks to exchange their notes due to flooding? And so is the minister prepared to initiate a policy for an extension of the time to exchange notes?
I'm not going to allow that as a supplemental question on the question that you asked or the responses that were given.
Public business, government business, bills, second reading.
Honorable members, the debate on the second reading of the following bill, which was adjourned a little earlier today, will be resumed. A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Administration of Justice, Indictable Proceedings Act 2011, Act number 20 of 2011. Member for Laventille West.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in quick response to my colleague for Oropouche West, he was East. He was crass enough to have mentioned, Madam Speaker, that I have a matter in court, demonstrating the two-facedness and dangerousness as a partial for my friend from Oropouche East. Indeed, I don't have a matter in court as if I were charged. I'm not even suspected or being investigated for anything like some of my friends. I'm a victim of what we now know as a UNC plot. When I went down to assist my constituents when they were having a flooding problem, and a number of UNC jerseys, and the member for Pointe-à-Pierre, the chief whip, told us on record, they have some soldiers on the beatum. And the police know the soldiers too. The police know the records of the soldiers.
8-6.
Okay, so, Member for Laventille West, I would just ask you to retract that and state that in another way. I think you're imputing the proper motive.
In particular, what, Madam Speaker? Retract what, Madam Speaker? I'm sorry.
In terms of, you were talking about people with certain associations and jerseys and so on. Please.
Madam Speaker, I stand. I'm not just now. I am never going to disrespect this House, never would contemplate it. But Madam
Please.
Speaker,
I have ruled. Please proceed.
I proceed. But I was stating a fact. Okay, Madam Speaker, I am a victim of criminal offenses, and I'm adopting the course of the law as a law-abiding citizen and member of parliament. We had a former member of parliament who was charged for murder in this House, associated with the other side. That's how they alleged to have resolved their disputes. We use the law and the courthouse to seek justice when we are wrong. That's the example we, the PNM, set. And we live by that. In one case, a man pleaded guilty and he was convicted in terms and sentenced by the court. And the other one is ongoing, and we will deal with that in that matter, Madam Speaker. So I reject any suggestion about I have matter in court. I don't have none to answer. Other people have matters to answer, not me. Madam Speaker, the member for Oropouche East told us that the Attorney General is on record as saying that there is no greater roadblock to the swifter and the more efficient administration of justice than the preliminary inquiry. It is the first time that I must publicly disagree with the Honorable Attorney General. I disagree. The greatest roadblock to the administration of justice and all that is good for Trinidad and Tobago is the United National Congress. Please, thank you very much, AG, for your acceptance of the correction. And you see it time and time and time again, including today in this House, Madam Speaker. The member for Oropouche East raised the question of conflict of the Attorney General. We are all lawyers in here. We are all members of Parliament. Every matter that is of public concern, public goods, public administration concern every one of us. If we follow this logic, nobody in this Parliament would be able to debate anything. And as the AG quite rightly stood up in PNM fashion and said, I have no pecuniary or other benefit to be gleaned from this measure, and I stand clean and clear without any suggestion of being conflicted. And I applaud the Attorney General for that. The member for Oropouche East again tried to make a mockery of the fact that we have an amendment here. It is normal, since we assumed even before our independence when we had legislative council, in terms of a legislative council, in terms of the way laws are made, when the government brings a package of proposals before this House, it is to be debated And we take into account even what our friends on the other side would say, as we do all the time. So this question about amendments and amendments to amendment, that's normal. We sent a bill last week to the Senate after it was passed in this House dealing with, what was it? The Cannabis Authority and the decriminalization of small amounts of marijuana. And there was an amendment in the Senate that we didn't expect. But when I say we didn't expect, there's an amendment. So we have to deal with that here. So this question of amendment and amendment, it is their amendments we afraid. They amended the same preliminary inquiry law and gave us clause on Section 34. It's them we afraid. And we had to not amend it when they were finished with us. We had to come to Parliament a Saturday in urgency to repeal it. Remember that, Madam Speaker? So this member for Oropouche East, I don't know why he doesn't choose silence sometimes. He spoke about flooding, and you must permit me, Madam Speaker, he made reference to flooding on his constituents. And he quoted from the Newsday. Permit me, without holding it up, Madam Speaker, in breach of your rules, given my utter and utmost respect for you and this House. Deference. And deference even. Madam Speaker, at page 11 on today's Newsday, a picture and a whole page article issued by and written by one Sita Prasad, and she's quoting Rampasad Siraj, who is the president of the Penal Dibe Business Chamber. Madam Speaker, I don't live in that area. I traverse it regularly. I have business in that part of the country, and I take my business seriously. But, Madam Speaker, you and I don't live there. We don't know the ground circumstances, but we expect that Mr. Siraj, being the president of the business chamber in that area, that he would. And hear what he had to say. Just quickly, Madam Speaker, permit me, in response to Oropouche East. There are businessmen who have diverted watercourses and converted natural waterways into box drains. The Minister of Works tells us that based on how they have configured the place now with the success in business and business development that they have seen for the last 40 years in the Penal area, in the Debe area, the roads have now become the watercourses, unfortunately. So when the rains come, it's the road the water passing through and creating these problems. He goes on to tell us he doesn't know if they are complying with the planning legislation. But more than that, he said people continue to build without regard for the law. The Member of Parliament wouldn't come here and report that Oropouche East. None of them. But hear this, Madam Speaker. Mr. Siraj says, the chamber, I'm quoting, the chamber, he said, is concerned about the lack of interest shown by members of Parliament for Naparima, Oropouche East, Oropouche West, and Siparia. Where's Mr. Siraj? And if that wasn't truthful enough, he claimed that councillors for those areas are inactive, and at the local level, we see little done by the MPs and councillors. Little done. And he says two things as he concluded. You can't prevent God's work, meaning heavy rain, 14 inches of rain in a matter of 3 weeks. He said you can't prevent God's work. But when people blocking waterways and there is neglect on behalf of the MPs who he just suspected, that is the result. I finished with Mr. Siraj. I just thank him for his truthfulness and his candid commentary. And Madam Speaker, when they come to the Parliament, as the member for Oropouche East did a moment ago in his contribution, and try to castigate and blame the government, it is their neglectful representation, according to Mr. Siraj. That is true. Yeah. Madam Speaker, let me return to the matter in front of us today and forget the member for Oropouche East. He is as irrelevant as you can get it. And if I mention his name again, Madam Speaker, I might be ruled irrelevant.
So, again, as I said, this is a place of banter, but some of the things we want to poke fun at are serious things. Okay, and member for Oropouche East, I'm hearing you. Those are serious things, okay? All right, continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Law is an instrument of social change, and we amend it as we must to cope with changing social circumstances. Law is not an exact science like mathematics. Law is a social science. When we write law, it is written in words. Words are subject to interpretation, different meanings. This is why you have courts that would adjudicate upon legislation ultimately. So this whole question, as I said, Madam Speaker, of amending and all that, that is trite, and I didn't expect it from a man with a PhD, like the member for Oropuch, but with a man who is malicious and cantankerous, you can expect that. I didn't say he was. I didn't.
Member for Laventille West, it's not what you said, it's what you didn't see. So kindly withdraw that and
Withdraw that, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much.
Let me make it very clear then, having withdrawn that, some people, if they are driven by malice and cantankerousness, then they are capable of those such things, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, what is dangerous about this is that some of the people who speak the loudest to us are themselves under investigation. Some people. Some are lawyers, and we have lawyers in this house who participate in debates in this house, who sit on joint select committees in this parliament, who get access to information in great detail which the average citizen would not get. And as soon as they can't get their way in here, they go in the courthouse and launch attacks on the matters concerning the parliament. That is where the two-facedness of which I spoke comes in. We've seen that 1,000 times. And that is the dishonorable conduct that those who formulated this democratic parliamentary Westminster style never anticipated, Madam Speaker. They didn't think in 2019 you'd have politicians from around the world who would be so ignoble, if I may use a word made famous by my Rasta brother, may his soul rest in peace, Robert Nesta Marley. Madam Speaker, the AG has put it most succinctly time and time again, much to my admiration. I like a good speaking presentation, and good presentation. I enjoy that. One of the reasons why I love hearing you, Madam Speaker, when you do speak. But Madam Speaker, the AG has told us time and time again that there are 3 Ps that are important to achieve using law as an instrument of social change, supported by good governance, driven by principle that are necessary: plant, process, and people. Let me give you a quick example. We will be vacating, as you announced today, Madam Speaker, these chambers as the seats of the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago since 2011. As we leave here, these rooms will be converted into 64 new courtrooms in terms of plant. And at the same time, those civil courts that will occupy this space would vacate the Hall of Justice on Knox Street, so all of the courtrooms there will be used for criminal matters. That is a tangible and substantial advance in terms of improving plant and process. When we talk about process, we talk about removing laws that are obstructionist, laws that get in the way of modern, efficient criminal justice administration, Madam Speaker. It is for that reason that we are here today, to abolish the old preliminary inquiry, which from our learning, our experience, based on the submission of Lord, what's his name? Lord not Diplock, who was the... no, huh? Yes, it was Diplock. Yes, Lord Diplock, back in 1960, talking about the preliminary inquiry procedure as it existed then in England, that it was ossified. We live here on the Larceny Act of 1916, as I speak to you. The UK had that, we inherited it from them. They moved on since 1968 and 1978 with modern Theft Act of 1968 and 78. We're still on the Larceny Act of 2014, using cases as decided in the courts of England on the Theft Act as we prosecute matters on the Larceny Act. And when we return to government, this government will make a bold attempt at repealing that and replacing it. I can't state, but I hope that we'll get that. Let me not say more on that matter. New laws are necessary by way of process. Follow the money law. We have done that. Explain your wealth. We have had some cases over the last week where citizens of this country have had to explain their wealth. So the laws are beginning to bite. More and modern application of technologies, voice transcription, Madam Speaker. So now we move from the question of handwritten notes as it used to be, and this computer-aided transcription, the CAT systems as it used to be. We are now in many courts around the country on voice transcription. So as the speaker speaks, the witness or the magistrate, judge, or anyone else, it is translated into writing, Madam Speaker. Process. Those are the things. Court pay. And as we say court pay, why I describe them as obstructionists, and the AG accepted my intonation. There's a member, a former senator of the UNC, Gerald Ramdeen, who has promised, if he hasn't already done it, to take that issue of the court pay to court. And that is where you allow persons to pay money electronically into and out of court for beneficiaries, for example, maintenance payments. Instead of the lady having to go by the court and line up and no money there, she can do it and it goes to her bank account and what have you, Madam Speaker. So you see, cameras. China, they say 98% camerad. Wherever you turn, there are cameras, 98%. They reduced their murders from 30,000 a year to 8,000 a year in a population of 1.4 billion people. That's what we are about to do now. The Minister of National Security fought to reduce the cost of it and all of that, and there we go, processes. And as for people, masters, I just went to the magistrate's court today in furtherance of my matter in which I'm a victim. And I didn't meet any clerk of the peace. That has changed. We meet masters inside of there now, legally trained people conducting the administration of the affairs of the court. Progress. We've done that. More judges, more puny or first instance judges, more appellate court judges. I think it moved from 12 to 16 or 15, and the judges moved from 36 to 64, Madam Speaker. And of course, as icing to the cake, they failed to do, we appointed a police commissioner, and he is on the job. He's on the job. The member for St. Augustine in his contribution told us, sheepishly I suspected, that the UNC started this thing about preliminary inquiry abolition. Yeah, they started the Ho Choi Highway extension to Point Fortin too. And like seagulls made a lot of noise and left a soppy mess.
Seagullism.
In the spirit of seagullism, they started the Red House as well, but come January, we, having finished it, will be moving in there. And they should be banished from speaking when they get there for that sin. But they'll want to come and talk louder in the Red House than anybody else. Failures. And we courageously have tackled corruption, white-collar crime, head on. So we are not surprised that we are making enemies. We are not surprised that there are people who are against us, but we stand on principle, and we trust that the majority of people in Trinidad and Tobago will join us on the platform of principle and reject the unprincipled among us. We're doing what is right, including the demonetization of the $100 bill. That was designed to make this place corruption-free and to root out the bad elements. Madam Speaker, there are 3 examples I would share very quickly. And I know that they are before the court, but the Dana Sita matter is now 4 years old. I ain't going to go into it. But what I can say, not about that matter, but in general, it is in the interest of justice is never served when you have these expansive and extensive delays in the court system. The principle is judgment, sentence ought to come as close as possible to the ill conduct that the society described as criminal. Because there are some ill conduct that we don't call criminal. But the criminal laws, when someone breaches them, the justice could only be best served when the sentence is meted out as close in proximity to the offense. 4 years. The PRCO, 19 years, PRCO inquiry. it works disadvantageously to the accused because people, after 4 years, after 19 years, the evidence is no longer fresh in people's minds, and human beings, what we are, a lot of things get lost. A lot of things get mixed up. Witnesses die. Witnesses die as a result of being killed. So when we take action to abolish the preliminary inquiry and quicken up the justice system with all of the safeguards that this bill purports to do, and the due process, Madam Speaker, we do so for good reason. There are a lot of sideshows that are very, very dangerous to this society. You have to have witness protection program. Somebody might be a witness in the matter. Their life is at risk. Witnesses have lost lives. So this is a very solid step forward. Very, very solid step. The Vindra Naipaul issue, that went on preliminary inquiry for 2 years. Of course, Section 16C, I think it is, of the Indictable Offences Preliminary Inquiry Act, the Parent Act, makes provision for paper committal, where the sworn statements of witnesses can be put in and will be treated as evidence in chief. So all that will be left when the matter goes to the assizes, the High Court, would be for cross-examination. That procedure still exists. And in fact, in section 23, a magistrate can commit without even reading these statements once defense counsel does not object. So I heard my friend for St. Augustine and the one for Oropouche East telling us we should not proceed with these. One of the main arguments about this is that, against this, abolition of the preliminary inquiry is that, they say you can go without a prima facie case being made out, but we have made provision for sufficiency hearings, and the standard, the Attorney General amended it, because when it first came here, this measure came here, he just said sufficiency, the law just said sufficiency hearing, without identifying the standard, balance of probabilities, proof beyond reasonable doubt. So he has now put that in. The member for Oropouche East is scathing in his criticism about amendment to the amendment and that kind of folly, and trying to be pejorative over it. We reject that. There are very few cases. Lawyers prefer, I can tell you, I practice in the criminal court and I've observed, I wasn't like that, but lawyers prefer to have 2 bites at the cherry. They like to cross-examine at length in the magistrate's court in the preliminary inquiry. Some lawyers think that when you do that, you unearth inconsistencies between the evidence given now and the evidence at the trial, and those inconsistencies might work to the defense advantage. Some might be motivated by money. I get to charge fees in the preliminary inquiry, and I get to charge fees at the trial. Or some lawyer, the client pays twice. And most cases are sent on indictment, because the court in a preliminary inquiry is not looking at credibility. The court is not looking at the truth. The court is merely looking to see whether an offense was committed and whether the person before the court could reasonably be associated with the offense, and whether the ingredients of the offense, as lawyers call it, are present. Once those 3 conditions exist, it most likely will go. There's one case that I learned about only today, where on preliminary inquiry, all the submission we make in the Galbraith test, the twin test, about whether the evidence is so manifestly unreliable, all of that comes to nothing in the reality. A case called Shippey, a UK case, where the evidence given by that one witness in the case was so intra-conflicting, it was so manifestly unfair and unsafe and unsatisfactory, the court did not send it. But in most cases, it's up the road it goes, because the lawyer can do what they want. Once the ingredients are there, once the accused or the defendant is identified with the offense, then it goes on preliminary inquiry. So that argument falls. In the Shippey case, she was internally consistent, and the stats show that it is about 0.01 of the cases that don't go to the High Court on that basis. So, I think that argument ought to fall. I know of a case now, Madam Speaker, where a man was charged for having in his possession, which he said he obtained from a store earlier the day or some such thing, $300 US. That was dealt with in a preliminary inquiry. An indictment now is to be drafted for him to go before High Court. $300 US. We could do without that. And therefore, it is good. The member for St. Augustine, Madam Speaker, tells us that, and unashamedly, you know, that the police, the magistrates, and the judiciary were the same people who advised the last government. I made a note, you know, in respect of the state of emergency of 2011. Madam Speaker, nothing could be further from the truth. The judiciary had nothing to do with that, except the AG ranting and raving at the time about jail and make the right fig. And he spoke in prophet-like terms, perhaps, but he said it. No magistrate had anything to do with that. DPP had nothing to do with that. The DPP was faced with the embarrassment of having to leave his air-conditioned chambers, put on his robes and go to court to tell the court there was no evidence in these matters in Trinidad and Tobago when they locked up 3,000 people, 245 people under the anti-gang law that had just been passed at that time in 2011. And 13 Muslims on the day before the coup, the day before the state of emergency expired. Dayal Singh, then Senator, Fitzgerald Hines, we stood up and we challenged John Sandy, the then Minister of National Security. We said, what a shame. I made the submission too. What a shame. You got yourself emergency powers. This thing ran for 3 months and not one person locked up under those emergency powers. It's an embarrassment. I think it's Dayal Singh caused it. By later in the night, they went and take up 13 Muslims using the emergency powers. 13 in some fake plot to assassinate the Prime Minister at the time. And they had to release every one of them. And the taxpayers of this country is spending money now on the 245 persons who were locked up under the anti-gang law, and on them 13 people. The UNC, the madness, and the Commissioner of Police, Dwayne Gibbs at the time, he was in Brazil on a course. He did not even know that there would be a state of emergency. And the member for St. Augustine who was in the cabinet comes here today, bold-facedly, two-facedly, typical UNC. Wicked. George Chambers said they are too wicked. And tell us to blame the police for that. What?
Madam Speaker. He just spoke up a day, and then he said they are too wicked. Could you retract?
Until West, continue, please.
I thank you for your protection against the ram. Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. The member for St. Augustine also told us, the member for St. Augustine, a lawyer, a mature citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, stood up in this chamber here today, behind parliamentary privilege, a privilege that only 41 of us enjoy in the whole country, and told us here today that sedition is not a threat to the state of Trinidad and Tobago. See, and the member for Naparima, who is the shadow minister of national security, asking me when last they charged somebody.
You wish to make an interruption under the relevant standing order? Right.
Midnight in the cemetery and ask that. Play duppy. Madam Speaker, as I told you a moment ago, sedition is not a threat. They concocted an arrangement and arrested 13 citizens, Muslims in this country. 13 for some alleged plot to assassinate the Prime Minister. The member was in the cabinet at the time. He comes here today and tells us sedition is not a threat. Let me come quickly to the question of warrants. My friend from San Fernando East, I must say, he demonstrated a rather scholarly presentation today. as he always does, really, Madam Speaker, but today was particularly wonderful. I sat, I ingested the contents of his presentation, and I must say to my friend, I thoroughly enjoyed and admired it. I've been around this place for many a year, and I know a good presentation when I hear one. Don't get it from the other side, but I know one. Madam Speaker, he dealt with the question of warrants, and I had some notes, and a lot has been said about the warrants. The important point for me to reinforce is that in the whole process of the issuance of the warrant, whether it is unlimited, I see.
Speaker, the original time is now spent. You have 15 more minutes to wind up your presentation. You may proceed.
Madam Speaker, the warrant, the provision in Section 5, and I won't waste any time going into it, it has been read twice in this debate already. Madam Speaker, the criminals in Trinidad and Tobago, the criminals in the world are particularly keen and smart. They are always trying to be one step ahead of law enforcement. You may identify the person, but you have to identify the places he frequents and is likely to leave the loot, whether it's $100 bills, money laundered money in stashes somewhere, or whether it is firearms, or whether it is drugs, or whether it is poor souls, the victim of human trafficking in a house locked up with a tall wall somewhere. I see the other day in America, they found some women and some children in a place. They're there since they were children, 30 years later, in America. So they are very keen. I have a case, I know of a case, where guns are hidden in somebody's roof. A citizen in Arima reported to me that a gun was hidden in his backyard, an AR-15. When he was cleaning out, he found this bag with this thing. You wouldn't find it in the criminal's house. You wouldn't find it in his car. In fact, talking about car, the other day they found 9 AR-15s in Belmont in a motor car. When the police intercepted it, and as a result of that interception, they were able to go and find a handgun in a house. So the police work on intelligence. What we do here as parliamentarians, of course with an eye on the Constitution, is to find a balance between the police and state power and the rights and protection of the citizens. We have to find a balance, but I find my friends on the other side always song as though they want to support the criminals. They song so. And tell us as though we have the power to carry out the search warrant.
Madam Speaker, said that those on this side always want to support the criminals. Madam 40.
Overrule. Please continue.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And Speaker, I heard the member for Orpuchi saying, and you want to do this and you want to search people's place, lending the impression to his unthinking and not so careful and unwary constituents that is the PNM government want this power to go and search people's house. No, it is the police. And as the member for San Fernando East made clear, it is subject to due process. It is a judicial officer who will decide on the basis of information provided to him or her that he or she will grant that warrant, whether it's unlimited or limited or for how long and for how many places, based on the information that the police provide to the judicial officer and based on the satisfaction on the part of that judicial officer before he or she issues such a warrant. Due process. So this idea that you want, like if it's Dr. Rowley or Stuart Young going by people's place, that's not it. They hide their weapons. They have boats parked up offshore, drugs and guns on the boat, and little pirogue making trip. So if you're going to deal with the pirogue and the pirogue owner home, you want to deal with the vessel too. And if you have an aunt in Penal, you want to go by she too. And you have a girlfriend in Sanwa, you want to go by she house too, because they are very smart. And they pose a danger to us. Hence the reason why you will find this provision in England, and we want it in Trinidad too. And we want it in Trinidad too. So if we have to make some amendment just to tilt the balance a little bit, nothing wrong with that. An amendment to the amendment to the amendment, no problem. It's they who suggested. Fine. But we coming down on the side of law enforcement with an eye on the Constitution. And Madam Speaker, talking about the Constitution, and I know time is running hard on us. The Attorney General has time and time and time and time and time again, to the point where, as lawyers say, it has become trite. In satisfaction of Section 13 of the Constitution, the principle is now not every amendment to the Constitution that touches and concerns or affects the fundamental rights as enshrined in Sections 4 and 5 of that document, not every one requires a specified majority. That's the principle, Madam Speaker, as a fact. So said Baroness Hale in the Surat case. And the majority of the Privy Council in the Barry Francis, and in the defrators case too, and many others. I want to drill that down for my colleagues on the other side. Constitutional majority, I tell you, they are the worst objectors and obstructionists that this country has ever seen. They have done nothing good for Trinidad and Tobago, but bring us shame and disgrace and obstruction, Madam Speaker. And Baroness Hale made it clear in paragraph 58, the Attorney General know it like the palm and the back of your hand. The amount of times I've heard that bright, beautiful young man say it. I know I learned it almost by heart. Almost. It has to be, first of all, justified in a society that has respect for the rights of the individual, and in a civilized democracy such as ours. My words, but that is essentially what it says. It has to be rational to the problem that you are trying to fix. You have to show reasonable contact with the problem and what you want to do about it. And thirdly, it has to be proportionate. In other words, when you identify the problem, you don't use a sledgehammer to crack a nut. If it's a nut, you get a little hammer. If it's nutty, you get the P&M. Instead of the UNC. So once you satisfy those tests and you put in the due process provisions, Madam Speaker, as we have done time and time again, then the need for a specified majority is no longer there. And what is worse, Madam Speaker, the member for Superior, self-helping as she has been, being senior counsel. If I were speaking to the ordinary man and not to someone as learned as you, I might have said she put her hands in the cookie jar, Madam Speaker.
That analogy, please. All right, so withdraw that analogy.
Okay, Madam Speaker. I withdraw that, Madam Speaker. But, Madam Speaker, I had to remind my colleagues some time ago that the process for the grant of SILT involves the Prime Minister of the country. The Prime Minister has the last say. And at the time the member for Superior was granted SILT, she was the Prime Minister. And that's what I meant, but I wouldn't say it like that again, Madam Speaker. I just remember the story about Bear Nancy and the bag of honey. And when you see them licking the honey all the time, the monkey jump down off the tree and he put the hand in the honey thing and thing. So they put some Jack Spanier next time. They put Jack Spanier. You remember that, Madam Speaker? We catch them. They go put the hand again. Madam Speaker. So as I said, less facetiously, Madam Speaker, once the due process is observed according to Baroness Hale and the majority in defrators, then we have met the standard, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have a suspicion that my time has run. But, Madam Speaker, the measures that are before us now was submitted to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, which has within its bosom a number of highly and acutely qualified young men and women. A lot of people just watch and think it's police. Plenty of them you see in uniform have degrees of all kinds. And integrity of all measure. And the lawyers in the TTPS reviewed this legislation. They had no issue with it. The judiciary commented upon it, had no issue. And if you want to find lawyers, you have to go in the judiciary. That is where you find lawyers. They adjudicate and do other things. And Madam Speaker, the DPP independently established under Section 90 of the Constitution. He and his team of lawyers at his office would have reviewed this and found nothing wrong with it. The Law Association and the Criminal Bar, they were submitted with copies of this bill and on diverse occasions asked to produce responses, and rather slothfully, they did not. And we take it that their silence is consent. So I want acquiescence, to use a more elegant word from my friend Fasad. Yeah, we take it as acquiescence. Thank you very much, Honorable Member. And therefore, either expressly or in acquiescence, these measures satisfy those entities, satisfy the LRC, the Legislative Review Committee of the country, it satisfies the cabinet, it satisfies the government. And here we are. Madam Speaker, so as we commend these measures, I mean, I would, how much more time? Madam Speaker, how much more time would you allot me?
You have about 4 minutes left.
4 minutes left. Madam Speaker, I don't think, I was about to analyze the elements of clauses 13, 14, and 16, but I take it that time has run. It is all in the legislation in front of us. I was about to go through elements of those. I think I need not detain us anymore. Madam Speaker, the people of Laventille West, noble, dignified, as most are, they support these measures. And through the lips and the representation of their Member of Parliament, they want me to communicate to you, Madam Speaker, in this House, that we support these measures wholeheartedly. We consider them to be justified. We consider them to be rational. We consider them, Madam Speaker, to be proportionate. And on the anecdotal evidence, some of which I shared, about the ingenuous and creative elements of the criminal fraternity, and the need for us to play catch-up, especially given modern technologies, Madam Speaker. We respond in this way, and we don't do it for the sake of the PNM. We do it for the good and the welfare of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Yes. Madam Speaker, I thank you. Yes.
Member for Naparilo.
Madam Speaker, I listened to the member for Laventille West, and every time I listen to him, I get a sense of why we are in the problem and predicament that we have in Trinidad and Tobago at this time. You get a lot of noise, sound and fury, fluff, but nothing of substance, Madam Speaker. I wish to remind him that the greatest roadblock to crime, he authored that, the member for Laventille West authored that on this side, but I wish to remind him that the greatest roadblock to crime is the incompetence, the ineptitude, and bad law perpetrated by the PNN on the hapless people of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, in South we have a thing called a little strap we call a bull pistol, Madam Speaker. And this has known to put people in a tizzy, Madam Speaker. I know of a fellow got a bull pistol and he ran up a banga tree. And he sat down for 2 hours, and they tell him, come down. He say, why, for pick out a joke, man? You know, understand? Now, the behavior on that side is indicative. Is indicative, Madam Speaker.
Are we not entitled to a proper joke if we haven't one?
Where's he standing? Madam Speaker, the people of Trinidad and Tobago spoke on December the 2nd. 40,000 more citizens of Trinidad and Tobago voted for us than voted for those on the other side. So, Madam Speaker, we will take whatever they say, because we know it is only a matter of time, Madam Speaker, when we shall be there and they shall be over here. The only thing I would say is that we would treat them with humanity and empathy and listen to their views and perspectives, not the pejorative attitude that they have towards us, that nothing matters. Madam Speaker, I heard the member for Laventille West speaking about the great things they're doing in law to make Trinidad and Tobago a bright and prosperous place, Madam Speaker. What he would never tell you is the outputs of those laws. Madam Speaker, the output equals nothing. The murder rate, you will never tell us about the murder rate. As we head, Madam Speaker, as we speak, for either the first, second, or third highest murder rate in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. That is the consequence of what we have here today. So, Madam Speaker, we know why legislation is brought here, legislation upon legislation, to give the impression as if things are happening and that they are on top of crime. But I was reading in today's papers a comment by Ms. Susan Mills, it is? Yes. Today's papers, page 13. And she said, and she anticipated what I was going to say here today. And I quote her, "I fear that we shall witness faulty and dangerous legislation laid in Parliament in the months before 2020 election." And she went on to say hasty moves to introduce such things like the $100 bill. All with the end to give the impression that things are being done. So here we are, Madam Speaker, for the third time, to discuss the third amendment to this bill. The second amendment was in June this year. And earlier, we had the first one in February in this year. And we asked the question, why are these amendments that we are having here today and we are deliberating upon, why were these things not considered then in June? Madam Speaker, it is the same thing with the bail amendment bill. I asked them, why do we need to come twice? If you have given comprehensive thought and you have spoken to all the interest groups, you will anticipate all the scenarios. Madam Speaker, to come to discuss the bail amendment bill only to include, what they call it, submachine guns, AR-50s and AK-47s, things that have been around Trinidad for the past 15, 20 years, and it was not anticipated in the bill. So here we are today, Madam Speaker, looking at amendments to the bill. Madam Speaker, these things could not have been done earlier to save our time. We had to come today to amend Clause 3 to add in arrest warrant means a warrant issued under Section 6 or 8 or any other written law. Madam Speaker, it takes any genius to anticipate that some months ago that some laws may come about that you may have not thought about. So you give yourself a catch-all phrase to escape that situation to save us from coming here. Madam Speaker, and I'm dealing here with the preliminary definitions. Documentary exhibit includes a statement, extract, photograph, computer printout, digital file in any, and they add in here, digital file in any format contained in any device or other document. Madam Speaker, digital files have been around in this world since for the past 20 years, Madam Speaker. When I was in university, many moons ago, they were talking about digitalizing information in libraries. They were and we are here today. We are here today to put minister means minister with responsibility for criminal justice. Search warrant, and you're adding or any other law. It goes on, Madam Speaker, but this is the cake. It's like Clause 5. A master who is satisfied by proof on oath that there is reasonable ground for suspecting that there is in any building, ship, and they cross off ship, and put aircraft, vessel, vehicle, box, receptacle, computer, electronic device or place, and it goes on. Well, Speaker, if they would only read a little bit, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we come here to move ship and put aircraft, Madam Speaker. There have been split fires around before I born. I born 1949. That split fires that helped the British Air Force to conquer split fires, to conquer Germany, whatever. Madam Speaker, I read from Singapore Criminal Procedure Code. You see why they major in minors? They major in pronunciation. I major in the law. I major in research, Madam Speaker. If they would only read, Madam Speaker, Singapore Criminal Procedure Code, Chapter 68 of 2010. How long ago that was? 9 years ago, a decade. It was revised on the 31st of August 2012. Here how they define place. Here how they're superior to us, right? Or superior to them, not us. Madam Speaker, place includes any building or structure, whether permanent or temporary. Any land, whether or not built on. 3, any place, whether or not enclosed, and whether or not situated underground or underwater. I'll get to that. Any vessel, you see, Madam Speaker, they're not brighter than us. They have aircraft. 2010, they have aircraft in place. We meet here today. Where are we now? 2019? 2019 to change ship to put aircraft. But I'll get to that. They say any vessel, aircraft, train, or vehicle, whether mechanically propelled or otherwise, or any other means of transport. And they say any place, any part of any place referred to in paragraph A and B. So, Madam Speaker, we came here today to change ship, to put aircraft. From Singapore, they talk about vehicle, whether mechanically propelled or otherwise. Madam Speaker, we will be here next week, next month, to put drones, because they're now using that technology. And they have captured it here. The Singaporeans have captured it here by saying, vehicle, whether mechanically propelled or otherwise. We don't have that. Madam Speaker, they say, and it goes on to say, or other means of transport. Madam Speaker, the technology with the Colombians is that they're using semi-submersible submarines to evade the radar, Madam Speaker, to evade the radar. When that happens, and cocaine lands in Trinidad in a semi-submersible vessel, we will now have to come here very quickly to add that in. Do your research, come up with what is best practice, and incorporate and save us, Madam Speaker. I'm too old. I'm too old to be called to come here with it. Madam Speaker, I'll deal with it later. It is clause 5, C. It says, may at any time issue a warrant under his hand authorizing any constable or any person accompanying him to search any such building, and it cut out shift, and they put aircraft. Madam Speaker, again, when you go to Singapore, you know the Singapore Criminal Procedure Code, and I'm not a lawyer, but I had 3 days to research this, and I learned about PACE, Madam Speaker, and I'll show them PACE, Madam Speaker. What is PACE? Police and Criminal Evidence Act 19. If I had a year, Madam Speaker, I'd come up with legislation superior to this. You will come one day and get it done, Madam Speaker. Look what the Singaporeans say. We say, or any other person accompanying, or any person accompanying him to search. The Singaporeans say the court may, in appropriate circumstances, issue a search warrant to one or more named. You understand the difference? You understand first world and third world? Named persons who are not police officers. And all or any of those persons may execute it, Madam Speaker. I'll go on a little more later on. I just want to say, and that is included here, Madam Speaker, in the PACE, they call it. Lawyers call it. I'm not a lawyer, right? And they said here that it says that the persons who accompany the police officer must be named, Madam Speaker, specified. So we come here, Madam Speaker, we come here to, yes, section 5, 2A, where the occupier of any place which is to be searched is present at the time when a constable seeks to execute a search warrant, the constable shall, Madam Speaker, identify himself to the occupier, and if not in uniform, shall produce to him documentary evidence that he's a constable. Madam Speaker, I always learned as a junior counsel, right? I practiced law in the University of LLL, look, listen, and learn. Madam Speaker. Shall meant you must. But I subsequently learned that shall could mean, depending on the context, it could mean may or it means must. And they say the best practice is to specify must when you mean must. So with my junior counsel advice to the Attorney General is to be particularly specific. Deal with a certain measure of specificity, Madam Speaker, and let us know precisely what he means. And then it says produce, if not in uniform, shall produce to him documentary evidence that he's a constable. Madam Speaker, at this level, heading for a first world society, what is documentary evidence? A piece of paper in your pocket? Madam Speaker, the reality is, I have been subject to a search warrant when I was in PASU office, and I was campaign manager in the year 1998, 1999. Speaker, and the police came, and when you ask him, and we're talking about contextualizing the law, when you ask him where the warrant, he passed you straight, Madam Speaker. And I want to make the point, and I think it was made by my colleague, that warrants are used in Trinidad in terms of practice as an intimidatory tool, Madam Speaker. They did it to Chief Justice Sacharma. Cars line up, 7 cars, lights in the night. And I will speak to that because in Singapore, they say, Madam Speaker, it must be done at a time that is appropriate and not done in a time to inconvenience the people to whom charges, the warrant is being issued. Madam Speaker, the neighbors turning on the lights, looking at you, want to know what happened. And if they could do it to a Chief Justice, who is any member of the opposition or any average citizen in Trinidad and Tobago, they pretend they do not know the realities of Trinidad and Tobago. I saw Mr. Pandey. I need your protection.
It's an introduction you want to make, Member for Lavender West? Okay, make it properly, please.
I saw, Madam Speaker, Mr. former Prime Minister of this country, Mr. Basdio Pandey, no taller than 5'3", Madam Speaker, and some strapped-in police with, yes, are using the dialect. You don't understand it, you understand coquille broom.
Members, please. Member for Naparima, don't be distracted. You direct your.
Yes, Madam Speaker. Yeah, Madam Speaker. As a 70-year-old Prime Minister, and they had these big 6'5" police, and I say, that is overkill. But when they finish, and I will say, I have friends who are attorneys, and they told me that they know a little bit more the law than the average citizen, Madam Speaker. And they told me that that is the most intimidating experience one could ever have in one's life. In front of your children, you're humiliated. Your neighbors parting curtain to see what happened. You cannot walk with dignity. And that is why I'm saying, Madam Speaker, and I am not talking about the criminals. If I am a criminal and I commit a crime, let me get the full brunt of the law, Madam Speaker. But if I'm innocent, if I am innocent, Madam Speaker, and I'll speak a little bit about all those things, Madam Speaker. But most of my concern is the sloppiness of this bill that is before us and the amendments. My staff, Madam Speaker, told me, and they wrote the notes here, they said, no doubt you'll have to come back in 3 weeks' time or a month's time to do an amendment, the 4th installment of our amendments. Madam Speaker, little did I know that amendments are going to be circulated here today. So they have gone ahead of my staff in terms of the number of times that we have here. This is laziness, this is sloppiness, this is, Madam Speaker, if this were in Naparima College, we would have had a teacher, Dr. Alan Mackenzie. And Dr. Alan will put half of those opposite in detention. And they will have to write 6,000 times. I shall bring to Parliament well thought out law that can withstand the test of time. Do that 1,000 times, and they might be a little more reticent to bring sloppy legislation before us, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, And we ask the question, you bring us here before Christmas to deal with something that could have been anticipated before. And Madam Speaker, we ask the question, we have no problem coming here to reduce occupancy rates in remand yard. They will promise, Madam Speaker, it will not happen. I am telling you, for the remainder of their term in office, remand yard will have this, more or less the same population that it has today. Will it improve the DPP's office? Madam Speaker, understaffed by 50%. And we come here, and the member for Laventille West, as if he's living in La La Land, right? Abracadabra. We are doing this, we're doing that, we're employing magistrates, masters, whatever. All of us know today, as we speak, that the system is not working as it should. Madam Speaker, it was Senator Choate who brought a sense of realism to the debate. And she said, I'll just give an example. She said it is Hansard 4th of June 2019, page 91. She said, but we are hoping that when we legislate, it has an impact on the wider community. And unfortunately, we are not seeing that. She's a senior counsel, is she? I'm a junior counsel, so I have to take her a word. She's my senior, Madam Speaker. She said, I have used this example before, and I will use it again. Rio Claro Magistrate Court. The Rio Claro Magistrate Court now has from 9 to 10:45 to do her list. The magistrate now has from 9 hours and 45 minutes to do her list, Madam Speaker. Because she has to clear out by 11 for Princess Tong First Court Magistrate to sit. A prisoner on a murder charge who is brought by 10:30 has only 10 to 15 minutes for his case to be heard on a given day before he's sent back to prison. And somebody asking the question about taking a rocket engine and putting it in a donkey cart. This is what we're talking about, a system that cannot function. And we're passing all these laws, Madam Speaker, all these laws that wouldn't make a difference. Madam Speaker, rush legislation. Most of us are not lawyers. We got this on Wednesday, Madam Speaker. Today is Monday. You give us Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. 4 days for us to make an informed commentary on the legislation. I had to read about Singapore, Australia, England, Jamaica, read pace. And I will get to that later, Madam Speaker. And we only have 4 days. 4 days. What is it? What is this? What is this haste? What is this rush? Why can't we not wait? Why can't we not deliberate? Why can't we not get scenarios? Why can't we not get a wider input from the wider society? Nobody who has suffered in this country under a judicial system that is unfair to the poor and the weak in our society. None of them are being consulted. Not one. I know that. But yet we pass law in an ivory tower, and those most affected suffer. It's the same thing with the $100 bill, Madam Speaker. I am 70 years old. Excuse me?
Let's deal with this. Yeah, no. Let's deal with this. We're not dealing with the $100 bill, okay? Let's deal with what before.
I'm dealing with rush legislation, Madam Speaker. Rush legislation. Madam Speaker, I want to read some cases. Madam Speaker. Marriage versus the National Energy Corporation of Trinidad and Tobago. Judgment date, January 30th, 2019. Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago versus Marriage, judgment date, 11th February 2019. Singh versus the Public Service Commission, judgment date, 13th May 2019. Marriage versus the Petroleum Company of Trinidad and Tobago, judgment date, 20th May 2019. The Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago versus Daban, judgment date, May 20th, 2019. This one is interesting. Sukaran Singh versus the Commissioner of Police, judgment date, June 10th, 2019. And the Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago versus Ayaz Caesar. I hope I pronounced her name correctly, December 9, 29. You know what my research stated? We lost all those cases in the Privy Council, Madam Speaker. And I am saying, Madam Speaker, that we lost all those cases because the level of deliberation, dispassion, research is not there. So that I see it in this legislation. And the Privy Council, I could go a little further, you know. I could go a little further. You know, the question is, I'll ask a question in Parliament. How much money have we lost? And, Madam...
Remember what we're debating here, okay? So let's tie all that you're talking about to this, please.
We debating a law that is brought to us.
To ask, you okay? All right, okay, fine. Continue. Good.
Now, I know that, and you have to, a little, I seek your indulgence, that the Minister, the Attorney General is going to say that he is enjoined in all these legislation. Madam Speaker, but I go to their website, and I quote, the Ministry of the Attorney General is the arm of the government of Trinidad and Tobago responsible for providing legal services to the government and its various agencies. The ministry's obligations are primarily derived from the constitutional directives given to the Attorney General. And the Ministry of the Attorney General provides the following services: advising Cabinet, as he did with this law. He presented to Cabinet, and he presented it here today. So he's advising Cabinet, ministries, and state agencies on all, not some, all, as Espine said, all local and international legal matters. Madam Speaker, I wouldn't read it, Madam Speaker. But I have, in the last month, we lost in the High Court, about 6 cases. You know, and something, and I wish to warn, there is something about measured deliberation. There's something about trying to impress by numbers, where the emphasis is on quantity of laws and not quality of the laws that we pass in this Parliament. I want to pass good law, and my leader has said, we will always support good laws. So, Madam Speaker, Junior Counsel Rodney Charles, in my research...
Let me just answer. There's a difference between bush lawyer and junior counsels. I want you to be careful which one you're describing yourself as.
Bush lawyer, Madam Speaker. Bush lawyer. As a qualified bush lawyer, Madam Speaker. But someone who does deliberate research. I went to the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, 1984, which I'm told every first-year law student knows or must be apprised of. And I want to read some of the safeguards that I hope will be included in the submissions that we will get later. And the question I ask is, why, if I could come up with this in 4 days, the Attorney General could not do this deliberate research over the 4 years that he has been in office? Madam Speaker, in the law, it says search warrants, safeguards. Safeguards. In fact, it is easier to read than our laws. Our laws, you have to run down the side and try to figure out. In Singaporean law and Trinidadian and British law, it is specified. So let me read some of the safeguards that they have when it deals with warrants. This section and section 16 below have effect in relation to the issue to constables under any enactment, including an enactment contained in an act passed after this act. And it goes on. The matters which must be specified in the warrant, pursuant to subsection 2B above are: A, if the application relates to one or more sets of premises specified in the application, each set of premises which it is desired to enter and search must be mentioned. You understand why Bush lawyer Rodney Charles have difficulty supporting what I consider bad law? Madam Speaker, B, if the application relates to any premises occupied or controlled by a person specified in the application, 1, as many sets of the premises which it is desired to enter and search as it is reasonably practicable to specify. So there's an onus on the magistrate, on the prosecution, the police officer, reasonably itemize all the premises. Not in our law. 3, why is it, he has to state, why is it necessary to search more premises than those specified under subparagraph 1? So he has to give a reason why I want to go in A, B, C, D, and E. 4, safeguards, Madam Speaker. Safeguards. A country that is concerned with the rights and privileges of the citizenry of the country. When we are told we have no right to privacy, they don't want to give us bail, etc. Herefore, Madam Speaker, why it is not reasonably practicable to specify all the premises which it is desired to enter and search. Madam Speaker. Point 3. An application for such a warrant shall be made ex parte and supported by information in writing. The constable shall answer on oath. Hear this. The constable shall answer on oath any question that the justice of peace or judge hearing the application asks him. On oath. A warrant, 5. A warrant shall authorize an entry on one occasion only, unless it specifies that it authorizes multiple entries. If it specifies that it authorizes multiple entries, it must also specify whether the number of entries authorized is unlimited or limited to a specified maximum. And it's good. And this is a safeguard which I'm looking forward to. Rodney Charles Bush lawyer is looking forward to in the submissions, the amendments on the amendments on the amendments that will come shortly to us. B, shall identify as far as is practicable the articles or persons to be sought. Madam Speaker, that means they cannot go on a fishing expedition. They think I might be involved in X, and they get something on B, and they go on a fishing to find something. Here, serious countries, Madam Speaker. And when you read this, and I was reading this as a layman, and I was saying, but why could the Attorney General clearly he did research on this piece of legislation, because when you look at the wording, there are many similarities between that, but he left out the safeguards, and I have to ask myself, why? Why, Madam Speaker? Why? Madam Speaker, execution of the warrants.
Naparimo, your original speaking time is now spent. You have 10 more minutes, 15 more minutes to wind up.
Madam Speaker, execution of the warrants. 1B. 3B. No premises may be entered or searched for the second or subsequent time under a warrant which authorizes multiple entries unless a police officer or of at least the rank of inspector. You see why I have problems, Madam Speaker? I have serious, and they'll come here after I leave, Madam Speaker, and they'll pick a minor point and say, I say, and create a straw argument and run off on that. And when I ask my staff to research it, and I have things, you know, Madam Speaker, I have things that I have to put into clear the record where I've deliberately misinterpreted what I said, go on to attack the misinterpretation. And since they speak last, I have no hope, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, a search under a warrant may only be a search to the extent required for the purpose for which the warrant was issued. Again, that is another instance where you cannot go on a fishing expedition. I'm looking there many more. Many more. But they don't read if I pass this to them. They'll just flick it away, you know, Madam Speaker. No wonder the Privy Council, Madam Speaker. You know, I wouldn't read this. This is where the Privy Council threw in the rubbish pan something that we sent up on the Ramble and saying this is irrelevant to the case. But they throw it in the rubbish. But I won't read that. It gives me no pleasure, Madam Speaker, to disparage anyone in this offense. I just have some questions. You see, this order right? Order basically extends the list of offenses in section 6 that cannot be discharged on the ground of delay, where the accused makes an application to the judge under section 27(2) of the Act. The new schedule lists 6 offenses. No problem with most of them, you know. But the sting is in the tail, Madam Speaker. You cannot come to Parliament, threaten us as they are wont to do, and don't want to do, and do not expect us to watch these things with cocky eye. Offenses, so man, you could be locked up for more than a year. Right? And I am particularly concerned about offenses involving misbehavior in public office. Madam Speaker, I know of serious politicians who were set up in this country. We could talk about Sadiq Bash. We could talk about a plant-like substance in a yard. Madam Speaker, you know what I do? I check my yard anytime I see a strange plant. I pick it up and pelt it outside. Because I'm frightened, Madam Speaker. I'm frightened, Madam Speaker. You see, I have no problem with a law that is dispassionate, that is objective, that it deals with everybody and no one is above the law. But when I get the sense that the law can be utilized for other purposes, I get worried. Offenses involving the misbehavior in public. No problem if I misbehave according to the law and the government and the state decides, or the state decides that they're going to delay. So what's my position if they decide to delay? I will be in prison for whatever years. And Madam Speaker, let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. I have learned that the thing is not for you to win the case or lose the case, you know. The thing is for you to spend 10 years of your life. I have 70, how much? 80? Well, I'll be done. I'll get away before they do the mischief. Madam Speaker, the thing is for you to live for 8 to 10 years with a cloud hanging over your head, Madam Speaker. There's another thing. It's a ploy, I'm not saying they do it, to pauperize you. Because when they do it, they're spending the state money. They could bring a Queen's Council. I have to spend.
What's the day?
The day is the person
One
prosecutor.
1 minute.
Prosecutor.
1 minute. I guess maybe you anticipated somebody may have stood up on imputing improper motives and said that the day was not the other side.
I withdraw this, and I say it is possible, Madam Speaker, for someone, somewhere, could lay a charge on you. And I know, facing Queen's Counsel, whatever his name is in London, and I have to get pounds, Madam Speaker. And you know how difficult it is since this government has come into power. First to get even your own money, TT dollars, far less to get pounds. And I have to pay somebody in England to fight to clear my name. Madam Speaker, that is pauperization. There should be a law that that person somewhere should spend his own money against my own money, and let us go to court, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, I have concerns. This is bad law. Bad law. If I go to Singapore, hear what they say, Madam Speaker, and I'm speaking from the Singapore, again, Criminal Procedure Code, Chapter 68 of 2010, revised in 31st August 2012. It says, execution of the search warrant. 29(2). Entry and search under a search warrant must be conducted during such period of time as may be specified in the warrant. Can't come 10 o'clock in the night, a Friday evening, 2 o'clock in the morning, and those sorts of things. Madam Speaker, it must be, and Singapore is a country that is not easy when it comes to perceived levels of oppression. In fact, the Attorney General misadvised the House when he said that under the Bail Amendment Bill, if you are caught with a gun, you will be hung. That is palpably not true. I know,
we dealt with the Bail Amendment just a few weeks ago, and therefore, let's continue. All right, please.
Madam Speaker, Section 29(3), if he is not the person who is conducting the search, if he's not a police officer, he should show the occupier his original identity card. or travel document as proof of his identity. Madam Speaker, those are serious countries that one gets the impression they are concerned about the citizenry and the preservation of the rights of those who are innocent, not those who are guilty. It says, Madam Speaker, again, they have situations where a police officer above the rank of inspector could take certain actions. For example, if the property liable to be seized under subsection 1 is held or suspected to be held in an account or safe deposit box in a financial institution, a police officer of or above the rank of inspector may write and direct the financial institution to deliver the property to any police officer or any police station, etc., Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I think this operates in Trinidad, I'm not sure, but they saw it fit to put that in the law. If they take your money, any interest or other earnings on such account or any other payments may be credited into such account after the due date on which the written order was made. So they think, Madam Speaker, when you read these laws, they think about every eventuality, every possibility, every instance where they could protect the right of the citizen. I get the impression we have hurried on law in Trinidad and Tobago. And it is we to catch, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it is, I wanted to, I need, no, I need, you see, people speak anyhow. They speak after me and they say things. I need to clear the record. I must clear the record on something that was not UN Security Council 223. It is in my first speech, Madam Speaker. I know.
I'm not going to allow that, and if you familiarize yourself with your standing orders, I'm sure in every debate you may find something that may assist you with what you may have a concern with. Please continue.
Madam Speaker, before I close, member for Digo Martin Northeast, right? The member for Digo. When this bill was first brought to Parliament in November 18, 2011, you want me to read the bill for you, boy? The Parent Act, Madam Speaker. When the Parent Act was brought, right? The Madam Speaker, when in the opposition, the member for Digo Martin Northeast, the Honorable Coleman Burt, said on November the 18, 2011, page 324, while debating the Administration of Justice, Indictable Proceedings Bill 2011. Hear what my learned friend said. Quote, defense lawyers are going to make mass if you attempt to implement the system without putting the rules in place, without having the necessary number of judges, without having the necessary facilities, without having the support staff, the judicial service officers, and all of the apparatus that goes with a judge. You know, so I could give way. I used to love that view. He did everything already. So I take it you are still of that view. Because, I will point out to you, sir, that there are, yes, the annual report of the judiciary, 2017 to 2018. The Honorable Digo Martin Northeast says that the Attorney General has done everything. He appointed all the magistrates, all the masters, all the judges. We have courts all over the place functioning so that as you go in, come out, Madam Speaker. But according to the annual report of the judiciary, 2017 to 2018, statistics on magistrate courts and case management information systems show that out of 12 magistracy districts and 16 locations, only San Fernando, 2, and Scarborough have a case management information system in place, Madam Speaker. What about Port of Spain? What about Arima, Chaguanas, Mayaro, Princess Town, San Fernando, Madam Speaker? And you see why some of us would prefer if this Attorney General spends his time making sure that the system, the judicial system, is ready, capable, and adequately resourced, rather than bringing us here week after week to pass legislation which in our hearts of our heart we know is inadequate and not consistent with best practices. And Madam, with those few words, I thank you.
Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I find it as
Well, it'd be up to your friend to give way. I saw the Attorney General.
I apologize. I didn't see my learned friend there. Come here. My leader of my bench is indicating that I press on. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the level of preparation for a debate is indeed sincere. It requires people to actually find the most current and particularly most relevant material to speak to. And I regret, I'm very pleased to have heard the contribution from the member for Naparima, who confessed to being 70 years old. I actually thought he was much older than that, so I'm happy that he is as young as that. But Madam Speaker, when you listen to the contribution coming from the member for Naparima, started off by, first of all, listing out a number of matters at some point that the Office of the Attorney General is supposed to have lost at the Privy Council. Madam Speaker, it is trite that the Privy Council is the highest court of appeal for Trinidad and Tobago. For a matter to get to the Privy Council, it starts in the High Court, if it is, of course, a civil matter starting there. You then get to the Court of Appeal. You then go to the Privy Council. If you're dealing with an appeal from the magistracy, you may very well have started in the magistrate's court. It may have involved judicial review, the substantive matter. The member does not even understand that by the time you get to court in 2019, the matter most probably started prior to 2015, because our judiciary is clear that matters take quite a long time. So in laughing and bumbling and joking at his own presentation, the member is in effect laughing at his own government, because the matters would no doubt have started long before I became Attorney General. But worse than that, Madam Speaker, the level of, how should I say, the disappointment that I hold in the preparation brought by the member for Naparima is really in his last position. The member sought to put forward an argument that the Attorney General should fix the system first. And to anchor his submission, so diligent is the member for Naparima that he read from the judiciary's report, its annual report, for 2017-2018. Madam Speaker, if the member had a little bit more energy, perhaps he could have directed his staff. There is an annual report of the judiciary, 2018 to 2019, the year after the one read by the honourable member, and had he bothered to do some homework, as apart from just reading the law of Singapore, he would see that there's a section beginning at page 19. It's called Transformation for Enhanced Delivery. Transforming the criminal courts. The judiciary speaks at page 20. The Criminal Division and Criminal and Traffic Court Act number 12 of 2018. In that report at that page, in 2018, the judiciary, through the Juvenile Court Project and Family and Children Division Act number 6 of 2016, sought to deliver on its commitment to improve services. They go on to improvements at the summary courts, the magistracy registrars and clerks of the court. They go on to the court managers and assistant court managers. They go on to district clerks of the court, comparison between Supreme Court and Supreme Court officer structure, district court day-to-day leadership and management, implementing criminal case flow management strategies in criminal division, trial by judge alone, individual calendaring system, transformation for greater efficiency and public convenience, judiciary e-initiatives, case flow information management. It goes on to speak to transforming the traffic court with TT Jim. It goes on to e-services,
It goes on to court pay, court mail, e-probate, bailnet, e-service integration, small claims court, future of small claims, process handling, courthouse development at page 43, courthouse development being at an all-time high. It shows the Family Court Tobago, Customer Services Children's Court. It steps into the 25 courts opened by our government. It goes into the Princestown Magistrates Court, Arima Magistrates Court, San Fernando, Sangre Grande, Siparia, Family and Children Division. My lady, Honorable Speaker, it is shameless that the member for Naparima can't even read from the judiciary's own pronouncements in the annual report of 2018-2019. He says that somehow this government is supposed to be lazy. Madam Speaker, that is the epitome of sloth, intellectual sloth, to read an annual report which is more than 1 year old, when the one produced by the judiciary this year basically gives chapter and verse of the active implementation. The honourable member sought, laughing at himself, to ask and offered to give way to the member for Diego Martin Northeast. Madam Speaker, he read from the Hansard contribution when we debated in November 2011 the Parent Act which we seek to amend. He read from page 324. He said that the member, that is the Honourable Colum Imbert, Minister of Finance, said defense lawyers will have a field day. They will make masks. You have to have rules in place, support staff, judicial staff. Madam Speaker, in 2011, there was an undertaking given by the UNC in passing the law then, the Parent Act which we seek to amend now, that they would not operationalize that law until rules of the Supreme Court were put in place, until masters of the court were hired to do the case management, sufficiency hearings, and until we had more courts. And Madam Speaker, the member for Naparima says that this government is somehow lazy. Madam Speaker, it's a fact that when Section 34 was proclaimed, the only section of the act that was proclaimed apart from the short title, that when Section 34 was proclaimed and 40,000 people took to the streets of Trinidad and Tobago, that the only thing that existed then was Section 34. There were no rules of the Supreme Court. There were no masters of the court. There were no courtrooms. But Madam Speaker, there were no support staff. Madam Speaker, in 2016, this Attorney General brought the criminal proceedings rules. Madam Speaker, in 2016 and 2017, this Attorney General and this government brought the Family and Children Division and Criminal Division, taking the judicial complement from 36 to 64 in the High Court and 12 to 15 in the Court of Appeal. It is a fact that when that member sat as the wheelman in operation for the UNC, making policy on the fly, literally, that there were only 2 masters of the High Court. We now have going on to 14 masters of the High Court. Madam Speaker, they shut down under the UNC, under Senior Counsel for Siparia. They shut down the building and maintenance facilities of the judiciary. Why? Because they said they were going to build judicial complexes. The only judicial complex that was built, Madam Speaker, was the one on paper done by architects that broke the Central Tenders Board Act, that abandoned the position. They did no maintenance of the High Court or Magistrates Court for a full 5 years and 3 months, and then are somehow surprised that we have had to build new courts, open new courts, have maintenance in place. Madam Speaker, the member for Naparima lacks all form of shame. There is no form of reflection by the honourable member for the truth as to the facts that are on the record, Madam Speaker. So the honourable member for Diego Martin, Northeast, was absolutely correct that there would have been a terrible situation with lawyers having this position on the record. But Madam Speaker, the member for Naparima said something that was quite interesting. Hear what the member had to say. He says they, kept going on with the they and the they. They should have the facility to have prosecutors effectively pay the cost of prosecution. Madam Speaker, where was that honorable member? Where was the member for Siparia when we took legal fees up to $1.4 billion in expenditure? Where was that member when we had to repeal Section 34 and Lord Panic charged this country more than $10 million to pay to do the court matter at the High Court? Madam Speaker, I want to tell you something. And I say this most respectfully. Recently, we were given a tip-off by a member that sat on the UNC side, quite a public tip-off, that there were legal fees expended in doing a certain review. As a result of that tip-off, Madam Speaker, I had cause to call for the files. And in calling for the files, Madam Speaker, I asked to see the invoices from certain attorneys who are Queen's Counsel based abroad. Madam Speaker, do you know what I found? There was a bill for a particular Queen's Counsel in England to advise on a matter, very large sum. The Honourable Member for Naparima quarreling, you can't get pounds, and he wants prosecutors to pay. Madam Speaker, I wrote to the Queen's Counsel in England to ask him to produce the opinion that he was paid for. To my shock, Madam Speaker, the Queen's Counsel, assuming it's the same one, wrote back to me saying, I have never done work for the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Oh my God. I know nothing about this matter. You surely must have another person by the same name in the same chambers, even though there is no one else by that name. That is what the UNC left for us. And I could tell you that that matter is under active criminal investigation as we speak. So when I hear the member for Naparima have a newfound glorious salvation for the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago, too little, too late, Madam Speaker. That is intellectual hypocrisy at its highest, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the audacity of the honourable member, the bold-facedness of the honourable member to raise things like that when on the record we can have scandalous situations like that, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, what I can say is that I heard one degree of sense come out in this debate, and one only. It certainly was not the allegation by the member for Naparima that the government was lazy in its approach. The member raised the issue of the bail amendments and said everybody knows that they have ARs and automatic weapons in Trinidad and Tobago. Why we didn't bring a law for that, Madam Speaker? We introduced the offense of trafficking for firearms in August 2019. When we created that offense was the first time we could have dealt with it in the Bail Act. Maybe the member was just absent on that day, as he appears to be absent today, intellectually speaking, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the fact is the statistics show that there were 0 fines for automatic weapons up until about 2016, Madam Speaker. Today it is commonplace. Madam Speaker, I want to put on the record who we consulted with on this law. The entire collection of judges assembled by the Chief Justice, justices of appeal, justices in the High Court, in the Assizes, the Chief Magistrate, the registrars of the court, the masters of the court, the IT technicians, the Executive Court Administrator, the DPP himself, the Honorable Roger Gaspard of Senior Counsel, Mr. Edward Jenkins, QC, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, today the member for Naparima called all of them lazy. He said all of them did no research. That is what the honourable member effectively said when he said that the Attorney General brought legislation that was ill thought out. He criticized the entire CPC's department, the LRC, all the hard-working technocrats at the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, the lawyers there, the people that are on the ground fighting criminality. This member had the audacity to stand up and call all of them lazy, Madam Speaker, and with aplomb, you know, so convinced of his position that he laughs at himself before he even finishes the statement. Madam Speaker, really, Madam Speaker, we have to be subjected to that, Madam Speaker. But here's the worst part. The honourable member says that the bill is so bad because we're amending the bill in the clauses that we're doing. We're amending the Parent Act of 2011. Madam Speaker, let me remind the country, the Administration of Justice Preliminary Inquiries Act of 2011 was authored by the United National Congress. It was authored by the member for Siparia and by then Attorney General Anand Ramlogan in 2011, long before they got senior counsel. So good was that piece of law that they then saw fit to recommend to themselves that they get senior counsel, and they granted it. But Madam Speaker, if that law is the same law we are amending today, we amended by Bill number 1, Bill number 2, and now Bill number 3. And we did that, Madam Speaker, because we went to the stakeholders, we traversed the law. Bill number 1, Madam Speaker, are the amendments that I as Attorney General brought because we needed to just amend the Parent Act because it was deficient. Bill number 2 and today's bill were driven in the process of consultation of stakeholders. And Madam Speaker, I want to say where the recommendations for amendment came from. They were born out of the judicial practice at the courts. As a result of judgments recently coming to the fore, we were advised by the DPP's office in particular to cause certain amendments. Madam Speaker, when the Director of Public Prosecutions writes to you and says, look, there have been recent amendments, there have been recent considerations in the law which we believe you ought to take note of, we consider that you ought to treat with this now. What are we to do? Just simply do nothing? Madam Speaker, it was the same DPP that had to write Anand Ramlogan as Attorney General when they proclaimed Section 34. He wrote, Madam Speaker, that it was a dangerous move to have proclaimed the law without any consultation. Cost the country millions, tens of millions of dollars, Madam Speaker, in that. In fact, today we now learn, and I won't go too deep into it, that some of the costs spent by the last government ended up in pockets of attorneys at law now before the courts. And we must listen to that. Madam Speaker, we tell Trinidad and Tobago that we did consultation right. We went to the DPP prior to proclamation, and we established this position. Now, Madam Speaker, the member for Rapuch East raised a point implying that there was a conflict of interest in my piloting this law today, and I'd like to put that squarely to bed. Madam Speaker, as Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, holding office pursuant to the Prime Minister's instruction and entirely subject to his prerogative, Madam Speaker, his pleasure, I, of course, have had cause to make certain reports and certain matters brought to the attention of law enforcement. I can tell you, in discharge of my obligations as a senator and as attorney at law for the Honorable Prime Minister, then in opposition, I also had cause to present certain matters to the courts. It is axiomatic that lawyers in any form or fashion are going to potentially be witnesses to court. But when we come here, Madam Speaker, we come here to debate law. If there was a conflict of interest, Madam Speaker, the conflict of interest under our rules in the Parliament are only in existence if you have a pecuniary gain to have. And if you do have a money in your pocket scenario to gain on the passage of the law, you declare that and you press on and you continue. The fact that I may be a witness in matters, the fact that the member for Siparia will be a witness in matters, or the member for any other one of us who are involved in the practice of law is irrelevant to this, Madam Speaker. There was criminality in the life sport matter. The person that birthed life sport was the member for Siparia. The member for Siparia is therefore likely to be a witness in the matter. But we don't raise that as a point of any serious moment. Madam Speaker, people say that you need to know everything. Madam Speaker, Trinidad is a country of 1 degree of separation, you know. If we, each and every one of us, start to count relatives, nobody could do anything. But the position is so foolish. It means that nobody could debate the Finance Act every year or the budget every year when you're passing law which will give you a benefit in taxation because you are a person who pays taxes in the country. What kind of insanity is that, Madam Speaker? It's just all how wrong, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the member for Oropuch East made a point which I thought was deserving of a second look. The honourable member raised the point of the Section 5 amendments where we look to the search warrant aspects. And I'd like to put on record, Madam Speaker, on looking at the warranting aspects, Section 8 of PACE is material for factoring. And that, Madam Speaker, is, of course, where the process of reform is driven. That came from a recommendation from Mr. Edward Jenkins, who is the Queen's Counsel acting for the DPP in a number of matters. And Madam Speaker, the Police and Crime Evidence Act 1984, as it is up to date to 2019, in Section 8 of that Police and Criminal Evidence Act, which we quite simply in the UK they refer to as PACE, P-A-C-E. It's an acronym for that Police and Criminal Evidence Act. It sets out, and I want to read what it sets out, that there may be an application by a constable to a justice of the peace. Stick a pin. We recommend a master. We're not going with a justice of the peace. We are going with a master who is a judicial officer in the High Court. Secondly, they allow for, here's what they call specific premises warrants and all premises warrants. And they allow that premises may be one or more set of premises specified in the application, or any premises occupied or controlled by a person specified in the application, including such set of premises as are so specified. This law also goes on to say that you may authorize multiple entries. The number of entries authorized may be unlimited or limited to a maximum. And Madam Speaker, I recognized, and that's why in the piloting of this law, that we ought to tighten some of the safeguards to this. We are including conditions for the grant, the factors that the master ought to consider, and the power to go. But Madam Speaker, insofar as the use of unlimited number of times may in fact be a little bit wide, we're prepared to make adjustments to that, as a result of which I have asked the drafting team to circulate some amendments now to the honourable members so that we can consider this particular position. Madam Speaker, the member for Naparima, in his usual style, sought to read out everything from the laws of Singapore. Again, cherry-picking the laws of Singapore. Madam Speaker, these honourable members come to us to prescribe everything under the sun, the moon, and the stars. If you spit chewing gum on the sidewalk in Singapore, you're subjected to flogging in public, Madam Speaker. But Naparima will not support taking bail restrictions for possession of automatic weapons. So he comes to preach to us, Singapore, Singapore, looking like he's having a heart attack, Madam Speaker. The honourable member comes to prescribe the laws of Singapore, where you will be flogged and caned in public for spitting chewing gum on the sidewalk, and this honourable member will not support the measures to ask a court to consider not granting bail if you have automatic weapons and you can't explain it, Madam Speaker. I mean, come on, Madam Speaker. Quite correctly, coming from the bowels of the PNM, he says, Madam Speaker, the example of a perfect movement, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there really is very little else to say in terms of commentary coming from honourable members opposite. other than to address in one point, I'll just join and adopt the submissions from the member for Laventille West on the constitutionality of this law. Madam Speaker, it is trite law that the Privy Council has set out for us and our own Court of Appeal has applied on umpteen occasions what the test of proportionality is and what the circumstances for the grant or the utilization of Section 13 of the Constitution is. It is now settled law that not every right which is identified in the Constitution in Sections 4 and 5, when infringed, require a 3/5 majority or a deeper form of entrenchment. It is trite law that the position is quite simply that if you have a legitimate aim, if your law is rationally connected to that aim, if you go no further than you need to in the management of that law, if you are going only within the confines of what the current law knows, that you do not need a 3/5 majority. That's point one. Point two, when the UNC brought similar laws, they brought it without a special majority. Point three, wherever you have due process, let me explain what that means. Where you leave it to the court to decide if something is going to be done or not, in their sole discretion. You don't fetter that discretion. You allow for the separation of powers principle. You allow not only for a court to consider it, but you also preserve the right of appeal to the Court of Appeal and to the Privy Council. That due process removes you from the need for special majority consideration. And that has been set out in umpteen decisions, Madam Speaker, of the Court, High Court, Court of Appeal, and Privy Council. There is no issue as to constitutionality of this. Madam Speaker, we in the PNM believe that first world law is good enough for Trinidad and Tobago. We do not see ourselves as a third world country that must destine its purpose solely to what the rest of the world has left behind decades ago. In the United Kingdom, in the amendments that they caused, 1984, they introduced PACE. In the year 2000, they dealt with the abolition of computer evidence in the Evidence Act. Madam Speaker, when the honourable members seek to say that the Commissioner of Police apologized for Gulfview, the Commissioner of Police did not apologize for Gulfview. I was there at the meeting in Gulfview, which I convened as Member of Parliament in Gulfview. And the Commissioner of Police said that to protect the citizens of this country in hot pursuit, to liberate someone who was kidnapped, where the triangulation data demonstrated that the source of the phone call came from the area. It was in those circumstances that the police in hot pursuit entered homes in Gulfview. The Commissioner of Police said that day, as I recall, that he makes no apology in protecting citizens' lives, Madam Speaker. He said that if you wanted your family member recovered, I'm sure, as you see in the United States where doors are broken down to retrieve people, that you would want that done. So, Madam Speaker, let's get this clear. The Commissioner of Police said that it's the same level of anxiety and approach that was applied in West Moorings, in Tobago, in Charleville, in Gulf City, that he did not see houses by virtue of who ethnically occupied or who politically occupied something, Madam Speaker. And I, knowing the Commissioner of Police as I do for years, can testify that the man is about policing, Madam Speaker. And that is just simply it. Madam Speaker, we have brought amendments to the Administration of Justice preliminary inquiry legislation. We have brought amendments to law that did not contain anything of the type that we have brought in Amendment number 1, in Amendment number 2, and in this Amendment number 3. We have brought this law having operationalized the system. We have created rules of court, as I say in summary. We have opened new courts, Madam Speaker, in the early part of next year. By the time we are finished with retrofitting this particular place, and I'm talking criminal courts alone, we will have opened 100 new courtrooms, Madam Speaker. Let me repeat that, 100 new courtrooms. We have hired over 350 new employees at the judiciary's end. Madam Speaker, we have brought processes forward by introducing judge-only trials. They are already in existence. We've brought in plea bargaining, already in existence. We brought in maximum sentence indicator, already in existence. Madam Speaker, what I believe honorable members opposite are afraid of, and I say this in answer to Naparima's contribution, is perhaps there is a little bit too much protest, Madam Speaker, coming from members opposite. Madam Speaker, we have said that this law applies to everyone. It applies to us. It applies to the average citizen, Madam Speaker. The evidence on the outside speaks to that. Madam Speaker, I don't think that there's...
Attorney General, speaking time is now spent. You're entitled to 15 more minutes to wind up.
I need one. Madam Speaker, I don't think there's anything else to address, and I beg to move.
Honorable members, the question is that a bill entitled An Act to Amend Administration of Justice, Indictable Proceedings Act 2011, Act number 20 of 2011, be now read a second time. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it.
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Administration of Justice, Indictable Proceedings Act 2011, Act number 20 of 2011.
Leader of the House.
Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in accordance with Standing Order 15.5, I beg to move that the House do continue to sit until the conclusion of this matter and motions 2 and 1 in that order. Thank you, ma'am.
Honorable members, the question is that this House continue to sit until the completion of all the business before it. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, in accordance with Standing Order 68.1, I beg to move that the Administration of Justice Indictable Proceedings Amendment Number 3 Bill 2019 be committed to the Committee of the Whole. Yeah, I did.
Honorable members, the question is that the Administration of Justice Indictable Proceedings Amendment Number 3 Bill 2019 be committed to the Committee of the Whole. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. This House will now go into the Committee of the Whole to consider the bill clause by clause.
One to four.
The question is that clauses 1 to 4 stand part of the bill. The question is that clauses 1 to 4 now stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Clauses 1 to 4 now stand part of the bill.
Clause 5.
The question is that clause 5 stand part of the bill.
Madam Chair, I asked the Attorney General to give us an...
One minute.
5. Clause
5? Okay, so Member for Carney, just let the Attorney General address us, and then I'll take you.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Chair. Madam Chair, we propose the amendments as circulated to Clause 5. Firstly, Madam Speaker, in subsection 1A, which is on page 3 of the bill, Madam Speaker, you will note we're asking in the chapeau after the word warrant,
we wish to insert the words issued under subsection 1. And that is to provide clarity to the bill because it just didn't read right. The second thing that we propose is in subsection 1B, and that's at page 4 of the bill, that we insert after the word issued the words, and such search warrant shall be valid for such period as may be specified in the search warrant. And if I could explain that. So it would now read, a search warrant may authorize the search of premises on more than one occasion if the master is satisfied that it is necessary to authorize multiple searches in order to achieve the purpose for which the search warrant is issued, and such search warrant shall be valid for such period as may be specified in the search warrant. Madam Speaker, the TTPS and the DPP's office have confirmed that usually there's no time period inserted into warrants. There is a rule of thumb which they operate under, which is that they generally will go back after a month, but it's technically not something which is put into time. Because we're introducing for the first time the concept of multiple search warrants, we're proposing that we add these words so that a master, not a magistrate, remember this is a superior judicial officer to what normally is the procedure under Chapter 1201, that a master would consider validity for such periods as may be specified in the search warrant. In those circumstances, Madam Speaker, taking into account the observations made by Oropuch East, in 1C, where we had proposed that multiple search warrants may be unlimited or limited, we are proposing to delete that 1C in the form that it was expressed at page 4, and instead provide as set out at 1C in the circulations, where we now say a master may also issue a search warrant under subsection 1A, where, and here we provide further safeguards. The safeguards we provide are lifted directly from PACE, that is section 8.3, 4, and 5 of PACE for the record so that members can find it later. It is A, in the circumstances set out here, A through D, where it is not practicable to communicate with any person entitled to grant entry to premises. B, where it is practicable to communicate with a person entitled to grant premises, but it is also not practicable to communicate with any person entitled to grant access to the evidence. C, that entry to premises would not be granted unless a warrant is produced. And importantly, D, the purpose of the search may be frustrated or seriously prejudiced unless a constable arriving at the premises can secure immediate entry to those premises. I just want to say, this is actually in keeping, Madam Speaker, with the practice of hot pursuit. Where you have reasonable suspicion and you do not have a warrant, the current law allows for the concept of hot pursuit and the entry for certain purposes. That is, again, settled law. So we have gone no further than prescribing what is settled law in the country. We have also borrowed strictly from the proceeds of the methods set out in section 8.3 onward of the PACE reforms as they stand at 2019. Madam Speaker, we add in the caveat in 1D that the power to issue a warrant by this section does not preclude the exercise of such powers under any other written law. And I want to say why, for the purposes of Hansard. There is a rule that, and there is an application of law, that law can impliedly repeal or affect earlier laws. We're making it, therefore, entirely pellucidly clear that we are not affecting the search warranting in other laws. Why? We do not want to touch laws such as the Proceeds of Crime Act, the Dangerous Drugs Act, the Firearms Act, the Anti-Gang Act, the Anti-Terrorism Act, to name a few. We specifically seek to cauterize this in the circumstances set out here. That is the rationale, Madam Speaker, for the proposed amendments.
Yes, Madam Chair.
For Carney East.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. Attorney General, 5A that you have proposed in your amendment, in subsection 1A, insert in the chapeau after the word warrant, the words issued under subsection 1. Can you just read out for us now, how would it read based on your amendment?
May I, Madam Chair? It would read 1A, if you follow at page 3 of the bill.
Yes.
A search warrant issued under subsection 1
Yes.
may authorize the search of.
All right, thank you. Could you, under 1A(b), explain what you mean by any premises occupied or controlled by a person? That word, to me, is ambiguous or not clearly defined. What, if there is in law, forgive me, I don't know that, but what do you mean by controlled? I can't understand control of premises.
Sure. So the breadth of this language is firstly in keeping with what we know the law to be. But it's specific because we don't want to have to go for the legal owner of premises. So let's say X Limited owns the property. You have a deed, you see it's owned by a company limited in liability. Technically, the owner is the company. You'd have to get the shareholders or directors' consent. But when you arrive at that warehouse, for example, owned by a company, there may be somebody controlling the property, the manager in charge, the guard who is on duty that night. That person may be controlling the property. Similarly, we have to accept circumstances where we're treating with equitable ownership, where somebody might be the beneficiary of a property, but not the actual owner of the property in law. There's a difference between the fair owner or beneficial owner and the legal owner. Somebody may have inherited property and not quite transfer the property to their own name because there's a problem with the probate cycle. So it is specifically intended to treat with any premises occupied or controlled by a person specified in the warrant. Remember, the warrant must say who you're going for. So it is the premises of John Brown. It might be rented premises that you know John Brown rents. You're going to be naming those premises of John Brown, not Jane X, who he rents from.
But isn't there something in this legislation which said that you must give the search warrant to the owner of the premises? And what you just quoted
Yes,
there-
at 2A at page 5,
Right.
you'll see where the occupier of any place which is to be searched is present at the time, because the person may not be there. Maybe a home that's locked. When a constable seeks to execute a search warrant, the constable shall identify himself to the occupier, produce documentary evidence, produce the search warrant to the occupier. That's been a perennial problem where people complain. In fact, the member for St. Augustine gave that example of picking up a warrant in one of his cases, which was on the floor. In this case here, we're putting a positive obligation in law that you have to give the people a copy of the search warrant, not flash it and wave it. So we're providing a very sincere safeguard in the law in 2A, which you would see provided at page 5.
I'm still not comfortable with your explanation on what is controlled, because you give a number of variable situations there which allow for ambiguity in terms of the person really controlling the premises.
So there's no ambiguity ultimately in the courts because it's been tested so many times what owner, occupation, and control looks like. Look, the Prime Minister just asked me something which was very important, and I'll put it on the record. What happens if the person refuses to take the search warrant and then allegedly didn't give it to them? The law is you throw it at their feet. Like when you refuse to accept service of a court document, the court process officer can actually throw it at your feet. I recall being in a funeral once where I was to be served with election proceedings. And whilst in the middle of talking to the family of the funeral member, the person sent by Mr. Ram Logan to serve me came into the church while I was talking to the family members and threw the documents at my feet and said, "You'd been served," in front of hundreds of people, with the family in ghastly shock that somebody would choose to serve an election petition on me in the middle of a funeral.
Madam,
Chair, Madam Chair, on number 5, clause 5. Yeah.
Member for Carries.
In your amendments, which you have submitted to us just a while ago, the extent of amendments, AG, 5, under 5(1)(c), let me go to A, B, C. That is, that entry to the premises will not be granted unless a warrant is produced. Isn't that what should have been existing all the time? Why is there a necessity to bring this in again?
I can...
please forgive me.
Not at all, Madam Chair.
Let me give you an example. In 2002 AG,
Yeah.
Officers came to my office in 4 Broom Street and had no warrant whatsoever. I called my attorneys and asked them if they can search my premises. They said no, they cannot search it. The officers went to search my premises and then went to my home, without a warrant.
Yeah.
So if entry to the premises will not be granted unless a warrant is produced, what can the owner of the premises do if the search warrant is not there?
Okay.
He's merciless
Sure.
to the police officers.
Well, he's not merciless. So to answer your
He's helpless.
first, to answer, I understand what you mean. I caught it as helpless, right?
Yes.
So you asked a very important question. Why put this in? Why put the power of search warrant? It's because we're going to abolish and repeal the Preliminary Inquiry Act. Chapter 1201 at Section 5 is where the existing law treats with a search warrant. It's much more relaxed. The existing law is by far more relaxed than what we're producing here. It says, any magistrate, not master, who is satisfied by proof on oath that there is reasonable ground for believing that there is in any building, ship, vessel, carriage, box, receptacle, or place, anything upon or in any indictable offense has been or is suspected to have been committed, or anything there which there is reasonable ground for believing will afford evidence as to the commission of such offense, or anything which there is reasonable ground for believing is intended to be used for the purpose of committing, may at any time issue a warrant under his hand, authorizing any constable to search that place before the magistrate issuing the warrant, etc. So the current law for search warrant, section 5.1, is much broader than what we're providing here. We're actually adding in some safeguards here now that, quite frankly, we think are proportionate in light of what the society now says, where there are allegations that people don't want to leave them with a copy of the warrant, they're guessing, they're frightened, etc. So we're adding for those things now. To answer the position of being helpless, that's where you have to allow the police to do their job. You have remedies, malicious prosecution, false imprisonment, assault. Yes, they are expensive, but that is the recourse that you go through. It has been in existence for many, many years, and that's just, unfortunately, the manner in which society allows for the privilege of the police to go to work. We trade our rights, our right of being protected, we give some of it up to allow for these legitimate purposes to prevail.
But do you really expect me to give up my right to allow police officers to come in my premises without a search warrant? And when I asked them where's the search warrant, they say it's coming. And they eroded the sanctity of my home and the privacy of my home, where my wife, who is an attorney, was sitting, relaxing on the evening at 5 o'clock, and here it is, the police come into my home. And that is the case which was, when the charges were laid, the chief magistrate of this country, Mr. McNichols, said that these are charges not known to law.
But the money was paid
And
back to the NHS.
So you can't have this.
come on, behave yourself, behave yourself.
Money was paid back.
Madam Chair, there's just one small note on what is circulated at C. Where you see at C,
Could we have some attention, please? Yes, Attorney General.
yeah, the drafters are just pointing out that unfortunately they had used the word and at C to D. If you look at C, it should be or, because it would be impossible to marry A and B. They are polar opposites.
Yes, sorry, member for Carney Central.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a question related to the constraints that you've now put on the time. Okay, so 5B, such search warrant shall be valid for such period as may be specified in the search warrant. So there is now this is now going to be time bound.
If the master thinks that it should be, yes.
All right, okay.
And currently the existing law doesn't have anything of this.
Okay, but this would introduce an element that can make it time bound even though for multiple
Yes.
warrants. Okay. This. Okay, no, the second thing here is that the other part of the law, though, in the amendments that you brought had to do with multiple destinations for search.
Yeah.
How is that addressed here?
So in 1A, we're allowing for the concept of multiple premises.
Right?
What we did is we removed the 1C of limited and unlimited number of times.
Yes.
So we're allowing the multiple premises. I took Oropuch East's point about the unlimited point. Even though England has it, we've moved away from that. We've kept with the multiple premises, but we have also given some reflections for the court to look at the practicality of getting in. And if the master chooses to put limitations for time restrictions, we're allowing for that. The current law has none of that. Right now, they just issue a warrant and it's arguably valid. There's no position that says when it expires. As a rule of thumb, the Trinidad and Tobago police tell us that they usually after 1 month will go for a fresh warrant, even though there's no time frame on it.
Okay. As the law will stand with the amendments that you here propose, it will then cover multiple or any premises, but be limited by the time frame, if such a time frame is determined by the master of the court.
That's
Is that
correct.
it?
That's exactly
All right,
it.
okay.
Madam Chair, just a few more wordsmithing points by the CPC. At 1C, paragraph C, if you could just strike the word that. And if you, at B, strike the word where, because there'd be two wheres. If you see it's in the chapeau as well, right? And then, of course, and goes to or at C. And then, instead of to them at the end of D, see those two words there? If we change that to the premises. That's it?
Okay, so the question is that clause 5 be amended as circulated and further amended at 5C to delete at 1CB the word where, at 1CC to delete the word that, and to change the word and to the word or, and at 1CD to delete the word them and substitute the words the premises.
Yes, ma'am.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. The question is that clause 5 as amended now stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Whip, can we take 6 to 23 together?
Clauses 6 to 23.
Madam Chair, just for clarity, just remember there's a 1D as circulated, yes?
Yes.
So that was gone
because-
as circulated. Yes, ma'am. And as further amended. Thank you.
To it, yes. Okay, so we call then clauses 6 to 14, yes?
Clauses 6 to 14.
The question is that clauses 6 to 14 stand part of the bill. The question is that clauses 6 to 14 now stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Clauses 6 to 14 now stand part of the bill.
Clause 15.
The question is that clause 15 stand part of the bill. Member for Caroni Central.
Question for the AG Chair, and that was why is the age, yes, dropping to 10?
Madam Chair, it's section 98 of the Children's Act. In section 98 of the Children's Act, we amended that in 2016 under the Family and Children Division Act in the 5th schedule to that law, where we brought the law down to 10 in keeping with what the court has been doing and recommended.
So this would be part of the consistency.
Correct, yeah.
requirement.
Okay? The question is that clause 15 now stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Clause 15 now stands part of the bill.
Clauses 16 to 23.
The question is that clauses 16 to 23 stand part of the bill. The question is that clauses 16 to 23 now stand part of the bill.
Madam
Those-
Chair, 16, Attorney General D. If it reads, Section 24 of the Act is amended, D in subsection 6, by deleting the words under subsection 4 shall be ex parte and substituting the words for a warrant under subsection 4 shall be made ex parte. Now, ex parte is a very dangerous thing for any individual when things are taken out without their knowledge. Could you help to clarify why you have it remaining as ex parte rather than intra partes?
May I? Madam Chair, first of all, I've provided all members with a marked up version of the Act as it will be amended for exactly this purpose, to make it easy to read. Section 24 of the Act deals with discharge of the accused. And this is the circumstances where the DPP does not effectively proceed within 1 year. You may apply to discharge on the ground of delay, except for the matter set out in the 6th schedule, as has been recently amended up to October of this year. What we're doing, Madam Chair, in subsection 1, we're first of all adding in the concept of prima facie, so that we put the standard clear. In subsection 4, deleting the words judge for warrant of arrest, put the accused on trial. We're just splitting that up to make it abundantly clear between paragraphs A and B. It's just really linguistic for clarity. In subsection 5, our request for, and then we're adding in the words there to treat with it for the record of the proceedings. When we get down now to D in subsection 6, here's where the Act says an application, it said under subsection 4 shall be ex parte. Subsection 4 is where the accused is discharged. The master shall, on written request of the DPP, transmit within 14 days to the DPP the record of proceedings. And if the DPP, on perusing, is of the opinion that the accused ought not to have been discharged, he may apply to a judge for a warrant. So we had removed the combination of them there. So we're saying that that application by the DPP, the unilateral reconsideration of the DPP for a warrant under 4, shall be made ex parte and within 3 months. So let's hit it this way. Section 23 of the existing law, Chapter 1201, allows the DPP the same privilege. It is where the person was discharged by the court and the DPP says on his review, he believes that that ought not to have been done. The DPP approaches the court and says, look, I need you in these circumstances to issue a warrant for that person's arrest because that person ought not to have been discharged. It's in keeping with Section 23 of the existing law. It's the same power that exists right now, and what we have done is to just keep it within this bill.
Can I, from my little perspective, I know that there is something in law called double jeopardy. When someone is released or discharged, to file another case against that same person can be considered as double jeopardy.
So
which
this is not
be entertained.
Madam Chair, the honourable member appears to be much more of a lawyer than a doctor tonight. But what I'll say is that the concept of double jeopardy, and in this case, autrefois acquis, which is the actual subset of double jeopardy, that you have already been acquitted, right? This in law is not an acquittal. The preliminary inquiry process is subjugated to the Constitution. So the DPP has the right to bring indictable proceedings under Section 90 of the Constitution, to take them over or to end them. Because the preliminary inquiry is in fact not something on the merits of the case, because we did not get to there is no prima facie standard under Section 23 of the law, 23, 1 and 2 of the existing law, it's not deemed to be an acquittal for the purposes of double jeopardy. It's in fact a step significantly before that. The springboard for this is to be found in Section 23 of the Preliminary Inquiries Act. in section 23, and if you have chapter 1201, you'll note that the DPP may have the position, subsection 6, for example, if the judge, subsection 8, notwithstanding subsections 5, 6, and 7, the Director of Public Prosecutions or Deputy DPP may proffer an indictment whether or not a preliminary inquiry has been conducted, and then they go on to the circumstances there. They deal with, in subsection 5, in every case in which a magistrate discharges an accused person on a preliminary inquiry, he shall, if required to do so by the DPP, transmit forthwith to him the record of proceedings, and if the DPP, on perusing and considering the evidence, is of the opinion that the accused ought not to have been discharged, he may apply to a judge of the High Court for a warrant for the arrest and committal for trial of the accused person. So subsection 5 has that. The DPP pointed out to us that he wanted to maintain that power of the existing law, section 23(5), and so we've repeated it on this basis.
Okay. So, so can we proceed with 16 to 23? Yes? All right, so the question is that clauses 16 to 23 now stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Clauses 16 to 23 now stand part of the bill.
Clause 24.
The question is that clause 24 stand part of the bill. Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, clause 24 is where we do the consequential amendments, which would be contained in the schedule to the original law. What we propose here, Madam Speaker, are specifically on the direct advice of the DPP. There were two bits of advice that we received, one in the context of the evidence Special Select Committee, which we're receiving, and we received the written submissions coming from the DPP. And then secondly, in our sit-down consultations with the DPP and Mr. Jenkins, the recommendation to adopt that which was done in the United Kingdom when Section 69 of the PACE law was abolished in the year 2000 came to the fore. The position that we recommend here, instead of just repealing Section 14B of the Evidence Act, we want to put a positive statement that the common law applies in those circumstances. There are differing views as to this particular position, but there's a very strong view by the DPP's office in particular that we ought to go to the common law approach for the admissibility of computer evidence. That being a presumption of functionality of the equipment, unless it is put into dispute, in which case you then have to prove that it was functioning correctly, hardware versus software. So that's the rationale for the proposed circulated amendment.
Well, the question is that clause 24 be amended as circulated. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. The question is that clause 24 as amended now stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Honorable members, the question is the bill as amended be now reported to the House. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. This committee meeting is now adjourned. The House will resume. Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, I wish to report that the Administration of Justice Indictable Proceedings Amendment Number 3 Bill 2019 was considered in Committee of the Whole and approved with amendments. I now beg to move that the House agree with the report from the committee.
Honorable members, the question is that this House agree with the committee's report on the Administration of Justice Indictable Proceedings Amendment Number 3 Bill 2019. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Administration of Justice Indictable Proceedings Act 2011, Act number 20 of 2011, be forthwith read a third time and passed.
Honorable members, the question is that a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Administration of Justice Indictable Proceedings Act 2011, Act number 20 of 2011 be forthwith read a third time and passed. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? I think the ayes have it.
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Administration of Justice Indictable Proceedings Act 2011, Act number 20 of 2011. Motions.
Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move the following motion standing in my name. Be it resolved that the Senate amendments to the Dangerous Drugs Amendment Bill 2019, listed in Appendix 3, be now considered.
Honorable members, the question is that the Senate amendments to the Dangerous Drugs Amendment Bill 2019, listed in Appendix 3, be now considered. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it.
Amendments to clauses 6 and 7 as circulated on the supplemental order paper.
Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, thank you. Madam Speaker, for the record, I have no conflict of interest in this law at all, and I wish to make that abundantly clear because I have no financial or pecuniary interest in any matter that has to deal with this law. And I say that because there was some misleading commentary in the public domain, which was really quite unfortunate because it is just entirely untrue. So, Madam Speaker, I press on now to deal with the rationale of these amendments. Madam Speaker, we are proposing in clauses 6 and 7 an amendment. Firstly, Madam Speaker, to make sure that we remove what was an inadvertent inclusion at the committee stage of this particular law. In clause 6, Madam Speaker, you will note that there was an approach for how we treat with the quantities of cannabis amounting to between 60 and 100 grams. Madam Speaker, between 60 and 100 grams, it was the intention as expressed on the floor of the Parliament in the debate and in the committee stage that you would only be exposed, Madam Speaker, to a ticketable offense if you were under 60 grams. Madam Speaker, it was therefore necessary for the bracket 60 to 100 grams to ensure that you were not put into the route of the ticketable offenses. That drives the need for what is set out at paragraph B in reference to clause 6 to delete the word subject to section 5B2. That section 5B2 would have been the reference to a ticketable offense. For clarity, if you are in possession of cannabis between 60 to 100 grams and 10 to 14 grams, as I recall it, of the cannabis resin, you will be subjected firstly to tripping an offense. The offense would be $75,000. The court will allow for a discretion to consider if you cannot pay such sum as the court may award between $0 to $75,000, because Section 68 of the Interpretation Act says any statement of a dollar figure is really the maximum ceiling. It is not that you automatically get that amount. That if you cannot pay it in those circumstances, the court may in fact instead give you community service pursuant to that legislation, and that community service we set at a maximum limit of 50 hours, Madam Speaker. It's open to the court to give you a sum less than that. Madam Speaker, that also allows us to tidy up in paragraph A of 6, the amendment shown by making sure that we have the correct cross-referencing there. Madam Speaker, with respect to clause 7 on the amendments as circulated, we received a very good recommendation coming from Senator Paul Richards, which the government was very happy to agree to. Madam Speaker, we also received a recommendation coming from the independent bench again, that where one was going to apply for a discharge, that we ought not, in seeking the discharge to the Commissioner of Police under Section 50K of the Police Service Act, to confine the person to automatically using an attorney at law. We instead say that a person may apply. That allows you the bifurcation of either using an attorney at law or applying for yourself. That's at paragraph A of clause 7 as circulated. In paragraph B, effectively, it may look a little confusing there. What we're really doing is just simply removing the inverted commas after the word Constitution. In paragraph C, by introducing a new 5E, we are taking on board the recommendations made by Senator Paul Richards that we ought to have the ability of the court to make a recommendation for what we call public health matters, counseling, rehabilitative intervention or treatment, or psychological evaluation and resultant assistance. That, Madam Speaker, was the recommendation which the government accepted, that notwithstanding any other written law, before discharging or imposing a sentence, that a person may have the court consider these factors. That is much broader than Section 6 of the Dangerous Drugs Act, which allows psychiatric evaluation for 14 days in very limited circumstances. We consider that this takes us to the methodology which would allow us to properly proceed to implement this law. This is the decriminalization of certain quantities. For the record, whilst possession under 30 grams may be something that we don't prescribe an offense for, smoking or using is still a criminal offense, Madam Speaker. And therefore, it is very important that people understand that there are still consequences. This law is not in effect yet until it is proclaimed by virtue of the President's proclamation, which the Cabinet will obviously have to consider in its considerations, Madam Speaker. I beg to move.
Honorable members, the question is that this House agree with the Senate in the amendments to clauses 6 and 7 of the Dangerous Drugs Amendment Bill 2019. Member for Caroni Central.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I take the opportunity to make a few comments on these amendments and matters directly related to it and raised by the AG in his presentation. I would just like to point out, in relation to the issue of the 30 to 60 grams of cannabis and the 60 to 100 grams of cannabis, that we did raise on this side of the House in both the debate itself and during the committee stage, that we thought that those particular fines, given the fact that we were taking the route of decriminalization, were too high, and that the corresponding opportunity for community service would have been relatively low given the high fines of a few hours of community service. And I simply raise that again to say that it's a concern of ours in terms of the, in my view, imbalance of the penalties given the intent of the legislation. The second issue I'd like to raise here is in clause 7, which has to do with the matter of using an attorney at law in order to raise or to pursue the matter of pardon. And I want to say again that we raised that in this House. And we pointed to the fact that it would be an issue of cost and that there was no reason that this could not be done by the individual himself or herself. And there's the other issue too, which is if the intent is to pardon the person who has become a criminal for use that you are now decriminalizing and you are moving that person out of prison, why couldn't we automatically create the conditions for pardon? And do we need to really have the process so convoluted so you would have literally these thousands of people, according to the Attorney General, who would have to go through this process, now without a lawyer, but originally very cumbersome with a lawyer? So I just want to reinforce the fact that we raised this particular issue and that we felt that if the intent was to decriminalize and therefore grant an opportunity for getting out of prison and then being pardoned to thousands of people caught up in the legal net, that, you know, our position on this is very clear, that it should not be made difficult or cumbersome. We should simply make it as easy as possible. And the third issue I'd like to raise here has to do with the clause C, 5E, the power of the court to order counseling rehabilitative intervention. And what it does here is, notwithstanding any other written law before discharging or imposing a sentence on a person in relation to an offense, under this part, the court may make an order for counseling, rehabilitative intervention, or treatment, or psychological evaluation and resultant assistance. This is a very important clause that is being introduced here. I wish to acknowledge this. When I spoke here on the last occasion when we addressed the bill, I raised the issue of the one country in the world, Portugal, which had taken what one might call an extreme position of simply decriminalizing all drugs. And on the basis of that, recommending almost automatically, once someone were charged for any kind of infringement involving drugs of any kind, that the automatic option for the person would be some form of counseling and rehabilitation. Because this is critical, because once you decriminalize and you have a situation where it is open and free and the space is open to all, you need to have this provision in there. And I want to say that the Senate did well to make this particular amendment and bring it to the House here. I want to close on the issue raised by the Attorney General at the beginning of his presentation, and that is the issue of conflict of interest, Madam Speaker. The Attorney General declared that he has no conflict of interest. And he said so in relation to matters that he said had entered the public realm. And in fact, on Sunday in the newspapers, on 3 newspapers, you had these issues, 2 front pages. And the end result of that was that the Attorney General denied any knowledge that was in the public sphere. And here he comes and he indicates that there is no conflict of interest. I have no reason to doubt the Attorney General at all. But because this has become such a public matter and such a controversial matter, so much so that it was picked up by an editorial today, I want to raise some issues that occurred in the debate, which we need to take into account in dealing with this matter. Now, one of the things that the Attorney General said in the debate was that the Prime Minister originally was dead against criminalization of marijuana possession and smoking. And
Madam Speaker, Standing Order 48-1, we are dealing specifically with the amendments, and I don't see how this relates.
Member for Caroni Central, I have to uphold the objection on the standing orders. At this point, all we can really do is speak to the amendments that are proposed.
Madam Speaker, I accept your ruling. I want to raise this matter too, though. Since the Attorney General got up in the House and started his presentation by saying that there is no conflict of interest because he felt the need to do so, do I not have the opportunity, Madam Speaker, I have already said that I have no reason to doubt him, but to outline the position which in the public perception seems like a conflict of interest, and he duly has the opportunity to reply at the end.
For Caroni Central, unfortunately, no. You said what, and you had some leeway. You were allowed to say that you had no reason to doubt and so, but you can't enter now or re-enter things that were said in the debate, whether you feel it feeds the issue about conflict of interest or not. Okay?
Madam Speaker, I wonder if I might say this, which is that the issue of conflict of interest, which the member for San Fernando West raised, had to do with the fact that before the bill was debated in this.
Member, I have ruled I'm not going to allow that. Okay? So if it is that you have finished your contributions with respect to the amendments, I would ask that you take your seat.
I would simply like to say, therefore, that although we believe what
Just 1 minute. I don't want this to be a to and fro between yourself and the chair. If you're going on to say something about clauses 6 and 7, I will allow it. If you're going to say anything more about the conflict of interest, I'm not going to. So that should guide you in the few minutes you have left.
Well, I have said what I had to say on clause 6. I've said what I had to say on clause 7 about the matter of pardon and the process involving the attorney. I said what I had to say about the counseling issues, which I consider positive. But I feel that the conflict of interest of matter is not settled, and therefore,
Standing Order 48-1.
Member for Caroni Central, I think we're going around on the same point, and I have ruled. I guess I could even appreciate you may still have to use an adage or be in your bonnet that is unsettled, but I have ruled, and therefore, I would either ask you, if it's either on 6 or 7, I will allow it. I will not hear anything else, whether it's settled in the public domain or not, on conflict of interest. And I so rule.
Okay. Well, in that case, I would have to say that I cannot take the statement of the AG, and I will sit down, and this matter will...
Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to reply. The member made 5 points, and I wish to address them. First of all, the concept of the fines being too high and the opposition supposedly having raised that. Madam Speaker, there are no amendments of the fines being adjusted at all, so I don't know what the member is talking about. I specifically said that Section 68 of the Interpretation Act applies. You have the ability in the summary court process to go for Section 71, a reprimand and discharge. You can literally be convicted, reprimanded, and discharged with nothing happening to you. So I respectfully don't understand what the member is talking about. Secondly, the member claims to have made that the position that the opposition said that you ought not to have the attorney at law involved in the process of looking for a pardon. Well, apparently the honourable member didn't speak to his own Senate bench in the Senate, because Senator Sobers expressly, when the independents asked for the removal of attorney at law, it was Senator Thompson I.E. who raised it. Senator Sobers said there's no need for that. So apparently the left hand has no clue what the right hand is doing, and I will not accept anything that Caroni Central says about that, because it's clear that that is not the position volunteered in the Senate, and we're debating the Senate amendments. The UNC in the Senate said leave attorney at law. So I can't understand that the member is coming now to try and claim paternity to something that the independent bench raised, and his own senators, Senator Sobers in particular, asked to be maintained, Madam Speaker. Just nonsense, Madam Speaker. Nonsense. Madam Speaker, the honourable member clearly does not recall. Madam Speaker, could Naprima stop babbling?
No, that's... Member for Naprima. Attorney General, I think with your span of lexicon, you can find a better word. And I also want to say this, with your experience, I'm sure you could rise above that, and let's continue. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, perhaps the member for Caroni Central just didn't pay attention to the entire debate that we had on this bill. There was no way for us, in the face of the Privy Council ruling in Lendor, I said that 100 times, 100 times. The member comes across as studious, as deliberate, as engaging in research, but the member just would not read the Hansard, or better yet, recall the fact, by way of paying actual attention, that the Privy Council in the Lendor decision said you cannot treat with people en masse. What am I to do? Ignore the Privy Council and listen to Caroni Central? Where's the research that the member comes across as actually doing? In this complaining sort of tone and deliberate measure? Oh, for heaven's sake, listen to the debate, honourable member.
Speak on
The
a point
Privy
of
Council.
What's standing order?
Member.
Is the member allowed...
Standing order.
All three of us can't stand. Okay, so Member for Caroni Central, if you want to raise a point of order on the standing orders, I will let you.
48.6, Madam Speaker.
I would like all the other chairmen in here to kindly just, observe standing order 53. Okay? So, Member for Caroni Central, I have to overrule that standing order. Okay?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's pseudo-intellectual misinformation, Madam Speaker.
Members, I think we just got some very prudent advice, don't mind in his sedentary position, from the member of Urupuch East. And having regard to the way things happen here, we'd all shortly exchange certain type of greetings. So I would ask us all to sort of prepare the mood. Season of goodwill, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Privy Council simply says we cannot accept the recommendations coming from the member for Caroni Central. I prefer to listen to the Privy Council rather than the member's exhortations, Madam Speaker. I must be guided by that. Madam Speaker, the member again sought to somehow grasp paternity of the psychological or public health aspects which Senator Richards very commendably raised. Madam Speaker, whilst the government answered that there would be obviously ancillary services volunteered along this, we did not capture that in the prescription of legislation. This law was materially improved by Senator Richards' approach to this. The opposition certainly made no recommendations for amendments in writing, either in the Senate, no, Senator Mark did in the Senate, but not here in this House. We recognize that there was extreme merit in the amendment coming from Senator Richards. It has materially improved the legislation. On the last point, being the fifth point that the member raised, again, I reiterate, it's a fantasy to believe that there's any pecuniary gain that I could have in debating the dangerous drugs or the cannabis control legislation. For the record, I again state, I have no interest, pecuniary or otherwise. In fact, Madam Speaker, you may wish to know, and I would say this, my wife has a very large family, and I can't claim to know what they do.
As I say, the season of goodwill has lots of spirits attendant on it, and I wish we would take some of the higher spirits. Member for Naparima, I understand though you may have a particular aspiration, but not in this 11th Parliament, okay? So, Attorney General, I'm not allowing anything else on the conflict of interest. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Madam Speaker, I'm very pleased to see work come from the Senate, which can do what all others pretended they would do. Coulda, shoulda, woulda. 10 years and 3 months in the seat of power the opposition stood. As a government, coulda, woulda, shoulda. None of them had the courage to do what our Prime Minister did, which is to relieve the system and the weight and burden that the criminalization of...
I'm speaking to everyone here. There's a particular watchword that we should all practice. That's tolerance. So all of us should rise above provocation. It's not a defense in here. Attorney General.
Madam Speaker.
We'll try that.
Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, I too have love in my heart, even for some people opposite, at times. But Madam Speaker, I think that this is good law. I think it's way past its time. I think that our country would be better off, our criminal justice system, the many victims of this. I'm not an advocate of smoking cannabis or using it in any form. I think that there are some significant factors that parents in particular need to pay attention to, schools, professions. I think that this is something that is definitely in need of legislating to provide relief. 1 day more in incarceration for small quantities of cannabis, Madam Speaker, is 1 day too many, 1 day too much. Madam Speaker, I beg to move.
Honorable members, the question is that this House agree with the Senate in the amendments to the clauses 6, Honorable members, the question is that this House agree with the Senate in the amendments to clauses 6 and 7 of the Dangerous Drugs Amendment Bill 2019. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move the following motion standing in my name. Be it resolved that the Senate amendments to the miscellaneous provisions Law Enforcement Officers Bill 2019 listed in Appendix 2 be now considered.
Honorable members, the question is that the Senate amendments to the miscellaneous provisions Law Enforcement Officers Bill 2019 listed in Appendix 2 be now considered. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it.
Amendments to Clause 3, Clause 4, Clause 5, Clause 6, Clause 7, the insertion of a new Clause 8, and long title amended.
Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this appears to be a considerable amount of amendment, but in policy it really is not. And if I may just explain. There are effectively three things that we're doing in these amendments. One, we're including the concept of putting the Special Reserve Police into the protection for law enforcement officers, and I'll explain why in a moment. Two, Madam Speaker, we are proposing to bring into protection in the concept of retaliation the people who are in the category of persons who assist law enforcement officers. And the third thing that we do, Madam Speaker, is we simply remove the word paper from prohibited articles. So let's go in the reverse order. Senator Choate felt that it would be foolish, quite simply put, to include paper as a prohibited article in the definition of prohibited articles in the view of the encouragement against recidivism and moving to rehabilitation, etc. We felt that there was good intent in that, and that Senator Choate's argument that there could be abuse to persons who are incarcerated could prevail. So we accepted that amendment, Madam Speaker, which is why you will see that the first amendment to Clause 3 is to remove the word paper. Secondly, Madam Speaker, Senator Sobers on the opposition bench made a very good recommendation that we ought to include the concept of video recording and sound recording, because we had used the term images. And out of an effort for clarity, we thought that Senator Sobers made a very good point and that we should include the reference to video recording or sound recording there. Madam Speaker, Senator Choate made the recommendation that favor ought to be included in the concept of bribes or perquisites. The recommendation coming was that, and this was the wide contemplation, that favor encapsulated where people actually went outside the boundaries of what traditional payment and bribery, etc. was. The Senate felt that that actually included people providing sexual favors, etc. That was literally the concept that was discussed in the Senate. Madam Speaker, the concept of taking retaliatory action, we had provided in subclause 1A the concept that anybody who takes retaliatory action, that we provided that a police officer could be assisted, prisons officer, fire officer, customs officer, immigration officer, they could all be assisted by someone in the course of their duty. And we felt that it would make sense for the person who is aiding law enforcement to also have the protection against retaliation by including protection for their family members. Firstly, because they could be identified as specific individuals. Secondly, because we had criminalized action against the law enforcement officer and the person who was assisting. What was not contemplated by this House was protecting the relatives of persons who assisted. Madam Speaker, that would take care of all of Clause 3. Clause 4, Clause 5, Clause 6, those all treat, Madam Speaker, with effectively cutting and pasting the retaliatory protection, retaliatory action protection in the context of the immigration, customs, fire officers, Madam Speaker, in addition to law enforcement officers in traditional Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, Madam Speaker. We wanted to capture all, hence the cutting and pasting of the proposed amendments in Clause 3 into Clause 4, into Clause 5, into Clause 6, Madam Speaker. Again, borrowing the concept of favor as a prohibition, adding it on to perquisites and fees and bribes, etc. Madam Speaker, new Clause 8 is the addition of the category of police officers in the Special Reserve Police. Whilst there are many types of law enforcement officers, you have the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, you have the Supplemental Police Act, which includes estate constables and effectively reserve constables, but you also have the Special Reserve Police Act. The Special Reserve Police Act, we had intended to cause a standalone amendment for. We want, Madam Speaker, and we're in the course of working upon it, to introduce the professionalization of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service by including auditors, accountants, and lawyers in a different category of rank in the Special Reserve Police Act. So what we did in these particular amendments is we took the opportunity to carve out the Special Reserve Police, add them into the law enforcement protection so that they could be protected against retaliation, bribery. We could raise the penalties and provisions where they had acted improperly in similar circumstances to that which we did for the Trinidad and Tobago Police. For instance, heavily criminalizing the concept of tipping off and other improper actions where they could equally occur in the Special Reserve Police. So, Madam Speaker, that's effectively the summary of the rationale for the Senate amendments coming here across the provisions that I have just explained in each of the clauses that we amend and in the insertion of the new Clause 8. I thank you, Madam Speaker, and beg to move.
Okay. Leader of the House.
We're proceeding now.
Okay, so I now propose the question. Honorable members, the question is that this House agree with the Senate in the amendments to clauses 3, 4, 5, 6, and the insertion of new Clause 8 and the amendment of the long title of the miscellaneous provisions Law Enforcement Bill 2019. Whip.
Madam Speaker, I rise not to contribute in these amendments, but the opposition was not given notice that we were going to debate this motion here tonight, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we were taken by surprise, and it is again not fair to the opposition, not given proper notice or no notice at all to debate these amendments, Madam. So we are not prepared to debate these amendments here today. In the spirit of Christmas, I am surprised that this is being done to us, Madam Speaker. And by those views, we cannot debate this. The opposition is not prepared to debate this.
Leader of the House.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, these amendments have been on the order paper for quite some time, approximately 2 weeks. We did say when I asked for the adjournment, I did indicate that we would be doing motions 2 and 1 in that order. My friend is saying that he was not aware, but these amendments have been on the order paper for at least 2 weeks. So they were given notice by them being on the order paper for 2 weeks. And in addition to that, we did say when I adjourned the debate that we would be proceeding with motions 2 and 1. And that, Madam Speaker, and these are amendments that have come from the Senate. So we are of the firm view that they can be proceeded with today.
Okay. Attorney General, please proceed.
Speaker. Madam Speaker, I of course concur with everything. Madam Speaker, I'd just like to reiterate, these are very simple amendments. Despite the length of time to set it out in paper, it's effectively the same formula being cutting and pasted. Taking out the word paper, You're adding in the concepts of retaliatory action against relatives for persons who assist law enforcement officers. You separated TTPS, immigration, customs, fire. Madam Speaker, the Honourable Member, and prisons. The Honourable Member for Pointe-a-Pierre was correct in one thing. This is the spirit of Christmas. It's reputed, certainly when I was a child growing up, that you would either be on the naughty or nice list. When you were on the naughty list, Madam Speaker, you received a lump of coal, according to hinterlands. In Trinidad and Tobago, you might get nothing. You were on that naughty list if you failed to do your homework. You are a little bit lazy. You just didn't do your best, Madam Speaker. I pray that all my colleagues will be on the nice list this year and will take the opportunity to do a little bit more work, do a little bit of reading in the 2 weeks' time they had, Madam Speaker, to prepare for this debate. Get into the realm of wanting to support law enforcement officers, Madam Speaker. Why would you not want to give law enforcement officers protection against retaliation against their family members for Christmas? Why would you not want to give prisons officers protection? Why would you not want to give customs officers, immigration officers, fire officers, Madam Speaker? Those are things to put you on the naughty list, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this government is pleased to protect officers. We would like to proclaim and assent to this law. And in quick fashion, we want to make sure we protect law enforcement officers in this country. We apologize that the opposition can't read for the last 2 weeks, and I beg to move.
Honourable members, the question is that this House agree with the Senate in the amendment to the clauses 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, insertion of the new clause 8, and with the amendment to the long title of the miscellaneous provisions, Law Enforcement Officers Bill 2019. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. Leader of the House.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the House do now adjourn to a date to be fixed.
Honourable members, as we all know, we are in the midst of the Christmas season, a festive and joyous time in Trinidad and Tobago. So before I put the question on the adjournment of the House, I invite members to bring greetings on the occasion of Christmas. The Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, once again, the opportunity arises for us to get into a festive mood for a very good purpose. A season of hope and goodwill, notwithstanding the crosstalk, notwithstanding the objections, notwithstanding the stresses and strains that we have been through during the year. Christmas is a time that brings joy to the hearts of all of us here in Trinidad and Tobago, because we are a community that share each other's persuasions at Easter, at Diwali, at Eid, and now Christmas. Madam Speaker, we would like to join all those members of the Christian community and of the national community of Trinidad and Tobago in thanking all those who assisted us through the year, be it parents, colleagues, co-workers, whoever. Because at the end of the year, we can look back and say, we've made another year in a difficult period. And many of us have our individual stories, but there's no story like the story of Christmas, where the birth of a child brought hope to an empire, and for thousands of years continue to bring hope to believers and non-believers alike. So, Madam Speaker, this being the last occasion on which we will, in this building, have the opportunity to conduct business of the lower house of the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, I want to take the opportunity in the season of Christmas, a most opportune time, to thank all those who assisted us in conducting our duties as we have been able to do during 2019 and the years ahead. We've been here for quite some time. It's been a place that has challenged us in many ways, but it has provided the service that we needed. I want to thank the staff, Madam Speaker of Parliament, who have gone beyond the call of duty on so many occasions to have made our stay here comfortable and successful. And I want to thank the security services who stand with us here for hours, days, and nights to ensure that we are protected from those who think that we should not be so protected, even as we conduct the business in their benefit. I want to thank all those colleagues of mine and ours, both members of this chamber and other colleagues, who have taken part in the processes of administration of the country. And history has been written as we moved into this building temporarily, not knowing how long that state would be, but to be in a good spirit now, Madam Speaker, because we are, like Christmas, on our way to another place, to a better place. They say wise men came from the east. We hope that wise men and women would move from the south to the north, to a building which we have worked on quite assiduously in the recent months and is prepared. And I trust, Madam Speaker, that you will be waiting for us in the new year. So with that sense of eagerness and joy in our hearts for the Christmas and for the coming of the Red House, where we would be much more at home, the Red House being the national place of parley, place of Parliament. I do not want to ask any of my colleagues to leave anything behind. I quite like the spirit of cut and trust in the Parliament, as long as we understand that we are here to do the people's business. And I'm sure that the environment to which we will go will contribute in no small measure to us being better parliamentarians for whatever period we might be required to serve the public in this way. And Madam Speaker, we on this side, and I'm sure I can speak for my colleagues on the other side, want to thank you for the exemplary way that you've conducted the business of the Parliament. I also want to thank my colleague, Member of Parliament for Tunapuna, who very ably stood in for you on many occasions. Because for this place to work, all of us had to have done something. And I trust that we would be proud, leaving here this evening, that for the period that we were in this place, that we have steered Trinidad and Tobago to calmer waters, even though there's a lot more sea ahead of us. So, Madam Speaker, I want to wish you and your family a Merry Christmas. And we look forward to the bright and prosperous years ahead. I want to thank all my colleagues on this side and the other side, and those of the other place, and wish them good health, happiness, Merry Christmas, and bright and prosperous years ahead.
Member for Point of Order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as I rise this evening to offer warm and sincere Christmas greetings on behalf of the opposition leader and the opposition members of Parliament, even though we may be 9 days away from this special day, many families are hard at work undertaking preparations for this very special, holy, and sacred observance. As I offer these greetings, I urge our citizens not to be lost in the hustle, glitter, and frantic pace of these celebrations, but rather opt to carry out their acts with love as well as enlightened by the many significant lessons which this special season has to offer us, no matter our religious persuasion. One of Christmas's special lessons, which we as a person often ignore or reject, at times is the power of belief. The genesis of the Christmas story begins with the angel Gabriel announcing to Mary, "Do not be afraid, Mary. You have found favor with God. You will be with child and give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus." At that point, surprised and even shocked, all Mary could do was believe and have faith in the purpose which God had placed upon her. As the Christmas story goes, as we see yet another scenario appears where the power of belief and faith becomes eminent when Angel Gabriel then appears to Joseph. The angel told Joseph, "Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary home as your wife, because what is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She will give birth to a son, and you will give him the name Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins." Joseph never once questioned the will of God, but had belief in the part that what was being charted out for Mary and himself, regardless of how unbelievable it may have appeared at times. We must all agree that Christmas is about goodwill to all. Yes, it is about goodness, and yes, it is about doing good for others. But Christmas is also about understanding the power of faith and belief. It was faith and belief in God's plan which kept Mary and Joseph going despite the many hindrances. It was their faith in knowing that all will be well which led them to the manger, even though all inns were filled. It was belief which allowed Joseph to lead their escape from the wrath of Herod. Therefore, as we celebrate Christmas and move forward with our lives, we are called truly to understand the full capacity of belief and faith. This Christmas, one of the greatest gifts which we can offer each other as a people is the ability to rekindle and inspire each other to believe in each other's life purpose. In today's society, especially here in our beautiful Twin Island Republic, we have some of the most talented, gifted, as well as skilled individuals within every walk, genre, and segment of life. We have significant talent in academia, art, music, sport, culture, spoken word, and human capability. But as a country, we must ask ourselves, are they realizing their true potential? At times, we can be so judgmental, we can be so condescending and dismissive of the talents of others, not realizing the positive impact it can have on our society if properly utilized. It is time we get we get others to believe in themselves. It is time we get others to believe in their talents and their ability to use it for national development, for human development, as well as the societal enhancement. It is time we respect and help nurture each other's talent. This Christmas season, as a people, we must strive to ensure that we get others to believe in themselves, not only by words, but with our actions. In essence, this Christmas, when we look at giving goodwill to each other, let us base that goodwill in telling someone you can do it. Let us base that goodwill in actually helping someone achieve their dreams. This is why this Christmas, our wish for the people of this nation is not only goodwill, it is not only peace, but it is a hope that hand in hand we can believe in each other. The opposition's Christmas wish for our nation is that each and every citizen would be treated in a way that they would be able to not only achieve their true potential, but being able to work towards being equal partners in national development. Madam Speaker, on behalf of the opposition leader and colleagues, we would like to wish you and your family a Merry Christmas. We'd like to thank all parliamentary staff and ancillary personnel like the security and the servers who serve us our lunches and teas. Madam Speaker, we say thank you to them. We also wish them and their families a joyful Merry Christmas and lots of blessings in 2020. As I close, let us love, respect, and approach each other with a genuine outlook of nation building. We can differ on the path, but let us agree on the destination in building a better Trinidad and Tobago. On behalf of the opposition, I wish you a Merry Christmas and a bright and prosperous 2020.
Honorable members, I wish to join members in offering warm Christmas greetings to our Christian community and the nation as a whole on the occasion of Christmas. For Christians and non-Christians alike, Christmas is a sentimental season full of hope, charity, family, good food, sorrel, and parang. It is a time of year when there exists an all-embracing mood of goodwill and merriment. Attitudes which would surely benefit society greatly if observed and practiced consistently throughout the year rather than seasonally. For the Christian community, Christmas is a celebration of significant import. It is the celebration of the birth of Jesus Christ, God made man. The birth of Jesus is considered the greatest gift that God has given to man in the model by which man is expected to live. Regardless of one's circumstance or religious belief, let the message of Christmas be a reminder that the greatest gifts are not tangible or time-specific. Love, the joy of contentment, peace, tolerance, patience, empathy, compassion, kindness, and goodness are virtues which are valueless and timeless. On behalf of the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, may I take this opportunity to wish all members and the staff of Parliament and all of Trinidad and Tobago a very Merry Christmas and a bright and prosperous New Year 2020. Members, I also wish to crave your indulgence a little while longer just to bring a message to you all concerning the Parliament Channel Award. It is with great pride that I inform you that the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago recently won the inaugural Telecommunications and Broadcasting Industry Award for local content. The award was given by the Telecommunications Authority of Trinidad and Tobago to mark its 15th anniversary and celebrates the broadcaster which has shown how its local content of all genre and program types help to transform the national mediascape and promote the local creative industry. As you know, the Parliament Channel began broadcasting in 2006, and still remains the only television station in the region that is run by a parliament or department of government. The Parliament Channel operates on a 24-hour schedule, broadcasting not just sittings of the House and Senate and committee meetings, but over 450 productions on a wide range of topics dealing with our dynamic political landscape. These programs are also available on demand on the YouTube channel, Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. The staff of the Parliament Channel go about their business quietly and with no fanfare, achieving success and giving Trinidad and Tobago a product which is second to none. It is no surprise that we have been winning accolades since 2015 at the Caribbean Broadcasting Awards with the West Indies at War and I Count and the Vote at 70 in 2017. Thanks and congratulations to the team behind the Parliament Channel, led by Corporate Communications Director Colleen Holder and Production Coordinator Candice Dubari. Join me in commending them for their good work. Congratulations. Honorable members, the question is that this House do now adjourn to a date to be fixed. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? I think the ayes have it. This House now stands adjourned to a date to be fixed.